Trevor Eldridge from Troop 1577. Trevor?
Will the audience please stand and give your proper salute? Will you please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The audience may be seated.
Thank you, Trevor. I'd like to welcome everybody today. Hope you can all bear with me with my first shot at conducting City Council. So this is going to be an interesting evening, and I hope it all goes okay. We first have two presentations this evening. Hope we can get the microphone up there working. Okay. Recognition of Josh Suchowski for his service on the Planning Commission, and a presentation from firefighters assisting with the California firefighters. So we'd like to have the council members go down off the dais down below. Yeah. Is Josh not here?
We'll stay for the presentation.
Okay.
Strike there.
And we're going to punt. We would like to have the presentation on the firefighters assisting with the California firefighters that took place. So, Clint Peterson, our interim fire chief.
All right, first of all, thank you, Mayor, Council, for allowing us to do this presentation, and also for the opportunity to assist and deploy our West Jordan firefighters to California. As you are probably all aware, the recent fire situations in California prompted them to issue an 8-state EMAC request for firefighting resources. This is a governor-to-governor request. We have been deployed twice to California now, once in October, and our most recent one was right before Christmas, this past Christmas. All information received from California's Governor's Office of Emergency Services and also CAL FIRE is that this was a very successful deployment, and they would call on us again if the need arises. I have asked Captain Chris Maxfield, who's present here, who was in command of our last deployment, to briefly describe through a PowerPoint presentation, a very short PowerPoint presentation, about the situations encountered and their duties that they were assigned. Thank you. Captain Chris Maxfield.
Hi, thanks for your time. Appreciate it very much. I'll try and keep it brief. Chief knows I get carried away when I put together PowerPoints, so I'll do my best to talk fast, but please interrupt me at any point if you have questions about specifically what I'm talking about. I just want to kind of touch on everything so you guys have a little bit better idea, what we did and why we did it. So myself, before we get going, Blake Edwards, paramedic, he's here, paramedic Roy Todd, paramedic Ryan Stevenson, paramedic Travis Ball, and firefighter TJ Moser were the 6 West Jordan firefighters that deployed. And before I start, I just want to tell you what an honor it was to get deployed with those guys and how well they represented the city. They were phenomenal. Out of all the groups and nearly 100 firefighters from Utah, those 5 particularly were always keeping a positive attitude, even when things were tough and the hours were long, and they did a fantastic job. So I couldn't have done it without them. Grateful for them. All right. Like we said, we were deployed. This was the second time in October. They went for 7 days, and they actually sat in a staging area in the Chino area of LA County, never actually getting an assignment. So we weren't really sure what to expect. We ended up getting deployed for a total of 14 days. We assisted with 2 separate incidents, and we didn't have a single day that we weren't either assigned rest or on assignment. So we never once were just sitting idly in staging, which was a pretty big deal for us. And just to give you an idea, like I said, this is sort of an unprecedented thing for the state of California to ask for help. I was a wildland firefighter on a hand crew 20 years ago, and the one thing we always understood was that California will never ask for help. Just to give you the scale, this doesn't even take into account the mutual aid from the municipalities that help fight all these fires in California over the years. Just CAL FIRE themselves employs 5,400 full-time firefighters, 2,400 seasonals, 5,300 volunteers, and manages 4,300 inmates as both firefighters and camp hosts. They have an annual budget of $2 million. They have 967 fire engines, 59 bulldozers, 23 air tankers, and 12 helicopters. That's just CAL FIRE by themselves. So for them to reach out to a state like Utah and say they need help, that was a pretty phenomenal request. That's a big thing. As I mentioned before, a total of 6 West Jordan firefighters were lucky enough to go. We took Engine 52, which is from the fire station right next door, and then we cross-staffed a Type 6 engine, which you would call like a brush truck or a grass truck with Sandy Fire Department. We were assigned on the road. We showed up. There was a lot of us. Once we were on the road, they decided to break us up into these functional task forces. So that's a combination of different firefighting resources that they've put together so that they can lump those in as one resource for the incident commanders. Once we get there, it makes this a little bit more manageable, a little more easy to use. Our task force happened to be comprised of us, South Jordan Fire Department, Sandy Fire Department, and Salt Lake City Fire Department. In total, we had 3 Type 1 engines and 3 Type 6s and 2 support vehicles. Like I said, the Type 1s, that's what you're used to seeing when we refer to a fire engine. That's what you expect. The little truck there that we call a grass truck, or we call it an auxiliary here in the valley, that's a Type 6 engine as far as ICS or CAL FIRE is concerned. Just basic timeline stuff. Cal OES, Office of Emergency Services, asked for help on the 6th of December. By 5:30 in the morning on the 7th, we were all ready to go. So 98 firefighters total, 25 engines from Utah were en route to Southern California. That fast we were able to mobilize and get en route. We arrived in LA County expecting to go to Chino. That was our original destination. That's where the other crew went and stayed for 7 days and never got an assignment. We hit LA County, got some food and got some gas, and immediately got a call that we were needed in North San Diego County for a brand new wildfire start. While we were deployed, we worked 24-hour shifts. We would work the full 24 hours, and then we have a mandatory, and this is CAL FIRE's rules, we would have a mandatory 24-hour rest period. And then we would, and that rest period was used to refuel, restock, and recuperate our firefighters. A lot of people have asked me since I got back, where did we eat and sleep while we were gone? It's a testament to the CAL FIRE machine that they took care of all our needs. Initially, on the way down, we got reassigned. We made our way down to North San Diego County in Encinitas. We got a hotel room. We thought, man, this is going to be fantastic. I should have known better to get used to that, because that was the last time we ever saw clean sheets for the rest of the deployment. The rest of our time down in North San Diego County, you can see this little bunkhouse that we stayed at for 3 nights. It was fun. It was like the old style fire stations back in the day, so that was a little nostalgic for us. Accommodations at the Thomas Fire in Ventura were a little different. These trailers are actually modular, and they have, if you can see, there's 3 separate racks in there, so I know what it's like to serve on a submarine. While we were deployed on the line, we were expected to be self-sufficient for 24 hours. We had to have our own food. We had to have our own sleeping arrangements. We weren't allowed to all sleep at once, obviously, because we were on the clock, but we had to manage our own rest cycles and put some people down for a little bit while other people were out working and patrolling and doing those things. So on the left, you can see we slept on the lawn of this beautiful 1,200-acre ranch mansion front lawn that we were protecting in North San Diego County, and then it's a little more down to earth in Santa Barbara, where this is actually the parking lot of a sanitation building that we were protecting. We lovingly refer to this as Camp Utah, so that you can see our tents there in the background. When we're in camp, the food wasn't bad. They feed you a lot. They understand that this work takes a lot of calories, and it's a high-calorie expenditure. You can see a little trailer on the right. That's where some of those 4,000 inmate workers would fix up breakfast for us and dinner. While we were on the line, we got these, we call them the 5-pound bags, but they are actually, this was designed to sustain us for the entire day. So Part of our morning restock is we would go and we would grab enough of these for everybody on the crew. It's always good when they're measuring your food by the gallon. So it was a 4-quart, 1-gallon lunch, and that was to sustain you for the entire 24-hour period. You see a total of 10,000 calories if you ate it all. I think Blake's the only one that ever ate the whole thing. Good job, Blake. Maybe TJ. You probably are a little bit curious about our daily routine, so I'll quickly go through that, and then I'll get out of your way so you guys can get down to business. We were up at 5:30 every morning. We had to be at the base camp for each fire at 0700 for briefing. After briefing, we would receive an assignment, so they'd give us this packet. It was amazing to see the whole ICS system that we've learned about as firemen for so many years put into application by the people that invented it. So CAL FIRE was the first people to develop that whole program, and it was pretty impressive. You can see here on this particular day, our assignments were to fall any trees that threaten control lines, hold any control lines, mop up 300 feet for 100% into the black, and then also to affect any structure defense tactics that needed to happen. Next thing we would do is we would break out and we go find the rest of our crews. We'd discuss our daily objectives. We talk about weather, different hazards, and things like that before we decided to roll out. Once we got to our assigned division, we'd meet with our division supervisor who would break down those objectives into tactics. So we weren't strategic anymore. He would actually tell us exactly what he wanted us to do for that 24-hour period. And then, of course, we'd get to work. You see TJ here doing some fine saw work on a hot spot we had in North County. Our shift ended at 7 a.m., but we usually were hanging around at our division until about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock until the crews that were briefed at 7 o'clock at base were able to come and meet us, and we were able to brief them on the current situation. And then, of course, just like any government undertaking, lots and lots of paperwork to do at the end of each shift. Once we were back to camp, usually about 10 or 11 o'clock, we'd refuel, restock, and we'd usually make it to our lodging arrangements by about 11 or 12 lunchtime, and then we'd have the rest of the day to try and catch up on some sleep that we missed the night before. The first incident we went to was a Lilac 5 fire. That was, they call it the Lilac 5 because it's actually the 5th time that this particular area is burned. Started on the 7th. It was 4,100 acres total, 157 structures destroyed, 3 firefighters injured, and one of those actually was with the Utah Task Forces. He was with us. It was a Salt Lake City firefighter who had a burned out tree limb fall on his head. He had to be seen at a hospital before he returned to duty with us 5 days later. This is our divisional area. I was talking to Melanie before the meeting started. A lot of people saw the footage of the racehorses and heard a lot about that at the fire down in North San Diego County. That's actually right here, and this was our division, and we spent 3 days protecting this beautiful ranch house sitting on 1,200 acres in North San Diego County. It's actually owned by the owners of the Santa Anita Raceway, if there's any horse racing fans out there. And the other important thing that we were protecting was high-value livestock. So there was a horse named Nyquist who happened to be the Kentucky Derby winner from 2 years ago. And they valued him at about $23 million. So him and about a half a dozen of his closest friends we kept an eye on for 3 days. While we were there, we extinguished any hot spots that we found. We coordinated helicopter drops. And we performed night patrols, which had its perks some nights. After we were there for 3 days, we were reassigned to the Thomas Fire. That's the one in Ventura that everybody heard so much about. That started on the 4th. That's actually the one that sort of got the ball rolling on this whole thing. So they were dumping so many resources into the fire in Ventura, the Thomas Fire, that they didn't have any other resources available to fight any other fires if they were to kick up. And they were expecting erratic winds, Santa Anas, so on and so forth. That's why they asked outside of the state for help. Once we got there, well, when we got there, it was the 3rd largest in California history. Now, I guess it is officially at 281,000 and some change acres, the largest in California history ever. 8,000 firefighters and 1,000 fire engines were assigned to it at its peak. 1,063 structures were destroyed, 1 civilian fatality, and 1 firefighter fatality. This was our division. This is Montecito, this is Santa Barbara. We were assigned to protect for over a week and a half this particular neighborhood above Foothill Drive in Santa Barbara Mountains. This right here is about Oprah's house and Ellen's house, and where they're having all the mudslides is right in here. So while we were there, we were assigned to structure triage and PR, so we canvassed the neighborhoods. This was before any evacuations had taken place in our division. We went door to door talking to the people. Here's Blake right here, making friends and just trying to represent CAL FIRE the best way we could. While we were there, we triaged. I was going to bring a ticket, and I apologize, I just forgot, but they have these big yellow boards that you would go through, and you fill out different things. It would basically tell you whether or not you were going to try and save that house if the area was on fire, which was a little bit humbling, to be able to deciding the fate of somebody's property. Area familiarization was another of the jobs we had while we were there, to make sure that if this thing did blow up in the middle of the night, that we knew our way around, we knew these streets. It wasn't a grid system. We're spoiled here. So it was quite the undertaking to try to learn these areas and get to know the locals we needed. Also, infrastructure protection. So if you see right here, this is where Camp Utah lived. So that was our home for many, many nights, right there on the concrete. This is a water treatment facility that services all of Santa Barbara County. So big time infrastructure value. The second night we were there, we got a call from our divisional who asked that we take our Type 6s, these are the smaller grass trucks, and give them up to another division because they needed help with some flare-ups up on top of the mountain. So in the middle of the night, in the dark, in areas they've never seen before, which are no-nos in the wildfire world, we sent our 3 Type 6s and a crew boss with them up to hold this line on the top of the mountain above Montecito. And they did, and this is some of the footage they got. This is actually the morning when they were coming down the mountain. You can't really see it very well, but this is a big dozer line that's been cut right on top of the mountain peaks. That next morning, we got a sobering reminder just how much was at risk while we were there. That was the night that Corey Iverson, engineer from San Diego's CAL FIRE, was killed. He was 32 years old. He had a wife who was pregnant and a little girl. That kind of brought us all back to earth, and we realized pretty quickly the next morning that this was CAL FIRE's world, and all of these people around us were wearing this same badge and this same patch, and they'd lost somebody. So that changed. That really mellowed things out for us a lot. You know, more than just driving home to us the dangers that were out there. Really feeling for those guys and trying to understand, you know, their loss. It was different after that. Sundowner winds are what they call the Santa Anas in Santa Barbara. We got warnings those were going to kick up. On middle of the week, the second week, this is what we saw when we woke up and we're packing up and getting ready to demobilize back to base camp. This blew up and it continued to grow. As we're sitting there, they decided to hold us over. We ended up staying till about noon until they were sure they had enough resources coming from base camp to handle the blow up. And we started getting evacuation orders on all of our phones. This one here says leave now. And that was really interesting. That's when things got really real and we started thinking, okay, this may get into the neighborhoods that we've really built a bond with, that we've really owned as our own. This is heading that way and it was only just a couple of miles away. They ended up getting the resources they needed. They ended up sending us back for our 24-hour rest period. When we came back, they hit it hard with all of that air power that CAL FIRE has. We watched these guys all day long, dipping and dropping all over this place. They were able to get that fire containment in just that 48-hour period up from 30% to 60%, and in 24 hours we were demobilized. They felt comfortable enough that the areas that were threatened were in control enough that they could start cutting resources loose. Post-deployment stuff, right now I'm finalizing the paperwork for reimbursement from Cal OES, so anybody that has any questions about how that stuff works can talk to Chief Peterson, he's the expert now. But none of this was out of our own pocket as charity. All of this stuff is billable to Cal OES through the EMAC legal framework. I'm meeting with the EMAC coordinator up at Capitol Hill tomorrow to finalize our paperwork, so hopefully we can get the city back their investment. We're also in the process of identifying what and how we can do things better next time if this comes. Still a credit to everybody involved, our logistics people, the mechanics for getting the engine ready to go. Like I said, this happened all in less than a 24-hour period, and everything went relatively flawlessly with the exception of just a number of small maybe paperwork things and just a little bit of equipment. I think we're ready to go again anytime they ask. Thank you guys for your support. We couldn't have done it without you guys agreeing to let us go. It was a phenomenal experience. We're all better for it. Hopefully the city will benefit financially from it. And thank you very much. You guys have any questions?
Any questions for the captain? Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question, just a comment. I realize it wasn't charity, you got paid for it, but it was still a sacrifice to leave at the drop of the hat, not use that term lightly. You went out and took care of that and was gone for 14 days to perform this. So thank you, each of you, for performing that service on behalf of West Jordan and the state of Utah.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
So do we have Josh
Zukoski.
Sikowski here? Sorry for messing up the name. But
Mayor, I'll have to apologize. He's not here. We'll have to reschedule that presentation. We'll make sure he's here next time, so I apologize.
okay, we will move to communications with our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. As we begin the new year, the Utah Bar Journal sends out every month an update. I wanted to share that one of the lobbying articles in the Bar Journal is written by Frank Piganelli and Doug Foxley, our lobbyists. The only lobbyists the only job they do representing a single city is West Jordan. So every lawyer in the state of Utah gets to see what they think is the most important way to lobby, and they actually help identify on the next page every one of the lawyers that are a member of the legislature. So we now have a target that we can go after to help secure those things that will benefit the city of West Jordan best. So I just want to let you know it's subtle things that Frank and Doug are doing all the time to try to help the city of West Jordan. There is one other item I'd like to confirm, that there are several changes in the city. It's exciting right now. We have 8 openings throughout different department heads. It's going to be an exciting opportunity to see West Jordan change leadership in a direction not only in this room, but throughout City Hall. And so I look forward to maybe being part of that, hopefully, in the future.
Thank you. Paul?
I don't have anything tonight. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to staff reports. Scott?
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. David?
Nothing tonight, Mayor, but we look forward to working with the new council members and mayor and the existing council, parks departments. Looking forward to working with you guys this year. So thank you.
Bill?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Wendell?
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Interim Chief?
Nothing from us, Mayor. We appreciate again the opportunity to present that information. Thank you.
Chief Diamond?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to report back. We've been very active with our Facebook page since we got it up, and it's yielded some good results. We've gotten several tips off of several things that we've put up there, gotten information out to citizens, so it's going very well. I want to thank J.C. Holt, who's our PIO, but I also want to thank Kim, and his other name slipped my mind, Sean, who for their support and their help, especially Sean with his the graphics and things that he's done for us and helped us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. We'll now move to council reports. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to just recognize all the youth and the scouts that are here tonight, likely earning an advancement or merit badge or certificate award, something good. And we're glad that you're here tonight and seeing how your city operates and the things that we're doing to make our city great. So I want to also express thanks to Troop 1577 and Trevor for leading us in the pledge tonight, and just a little personal privilege there. That's my neighborhood troop, so I'm grateful that they're here. I want to express some appreciation to our fire department that went to California and provided that service. That says a lot about West Jordan, that we support our fellow firefighters wherever they may be. I want to welcome my new colleagues, Councilmember Whitelock, Mayor Writing, and Councilmember Lamb. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here for our first meeting. And also just wanted to reiterate with what Chief Diamond said with our police Facebook page. The one criminal who was apprehended after he broke into a house with a 12-year-old sleeping was posted on Facebook as captured, and that's been shared now 84 times and about 420 people. So I appreciate that, and there's almost 2,000 followers now just since we launched that, I think October, November. So great work there, but I also want to, we do have a West Jordan Fire Department page as well, and so I hope everybody will we'll get dialed into those two public safety pages and be able to be aware what's on when it's hot and dry outside and when there's criminal activity. And we just want our city to be safe. And that's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Much of what Councilmember Anderson just said, I'll say ditto. Well said. I don't need to repeat everything. And I want to apologize. Several citizens have called me over the last week or two, and I just found out today that my voicemail had not been sending me notifications on my phone. So I apologize. I'm not ignoring you. Today I found out that you left me messages. So I'll get back to you as much as possible over the next little bit, but I wanted to make that out there so anybody who's here or who listens that has tried to leave me a voicemail in the last about 10 days or so, mea culpa, my bad, and I fixed it, so we're good now. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I had the opportunity with the mayor and Chad to attend a Utah Cities League and Towns meeting. It was for newbies, and it was a really good training. So thank you for that opportunity. I look forward to serving our city.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. So yesterday, for those of you who are on social media, there's usually a day of that always comes up. And yesterday was the National Law Enforcement Day. This was a day that I can celebrate. I know there's a National Donut Day, a National Cat Day, etc. But a National Law Enforcement Day to celebrate our law enforcement is something that I stand behind. And I'm grateful for not only those that serve here in our city. We have a great fire and police department, but our law enforcement is great here in the city of West Jordan. I'm grateful for that. A quick congratulations to Amy Winder Newton, who was just named as the first chairwoman of the county council. For those of you who don't know Amy, she has served in many capacities over her years. I actually know Amy from when I was in junior high and high school, and she served in those times as well. And I'm excited for Amy, first chairwoman for the county council, and she's actually the county council person over my district, so I'm excited for her. A quick thank you, even though they're not here, to Chad Nichols, to Dave Newton, and to Mayor Kim Rolfe. They served us well over the past few years, and I know Kim served over 12 years for our city and did a great job for us, and Chad Nichols served 8 years, and Dave Newton served twice for us. So thank you to those three for all they do, and thank you to all of you here on this council who are not new for your service and for your example to the three of us as we begin our journey as council members of this city. And the last thing I wanted to say, Kayleen mentioned that we had some training for those of us who are new, and there were 3 things that came to mind that I would just want all of us to remember, and also those of you that are here with our city today, that government exists for 3 reasons. It exists to provide services, it exists for a sense of community, and it exists to provide local control. So those are the 3 things that are important. That's why we're here tonight as a council, is to provide those things for you and to make sure that those things are being provided for us as citizens of West Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to extend a warm welcome to our new council members and mayor. Looking forward to this next couple of years working with you. Thank you for being here. And a welcome to the Boy Scouts that are here. Thank you for coming and joining with us. So you know, Scouts, we help in this pulpit in a few minutes to the audience so you can come up and say what you want. We'd like to hear your thoughts about Councilman Anderson, since you know him personally. But we welcome you here, and thanks for joining with us today. And then on those 3 things, when he mentioned local control, that is you. You are the local control. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Just a warm welcome to the new faces that are joining us on the council, with Mayor Riding, Councilmember Whitelock, and Councilmember Lamb. Looking forward to working with you, and looking forward to, well, there's definitely a learning curve, and all of us have been there. Some of us are still there, but very much looking forward to the friendship that I'm sure will evolve as we're working together to serve the community. So thank you for being willing to go through the election process. Thank you for taking the time to get to know the residents, their needs, and what they'd like voiced here. And thank you for being willing to work with us who are here, knowing that we were going to be here, still being willing to throw your name in the hat and come and serve nonetheless. So thank you very much. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I have a couple of things that I wanted to tell everybody about. We have an Olympian from West Jordan, and I hope I can say her name right. Jerrica Tandeman, 23-year-old West Jordan resident, moved from the 4th to the 3rd place Saturday, January 6th, and is now heading to the Olympics in speed skating. So very excited to hear that news. On January 18th, there will be a presentation at Dannon at 10 a.m. The West Jordan leaders will be joined by Governor Gary Herbert at 10 a.m. to present an Environmental Achievement Award to the Dannon Company for their leadership and innovation in minimizing their environmental impact. This is the first environmental award the City of West Jordan has presented to a business. The presentation takes place at Dannon, 6165 Dannon Way. Again, that will be on Thursday, January the 18th. And now, as most of you are well aware, in the election this last year, in November, our form of government changed, but it doesn't change for 2 years. So we're going to stay under the current form of government we have, which is a council manager form. In 2 years, we will change to a mayor-council form of government. But for these next 2 years, I wanted to read a couple of things to you as the audience out there so you understand the form of government we're under now for these next 2 years. And these are from the Municipal Code, chapters 6 and 7 that we have in the city. First, mayoral duties. No administrative, executive duties. The mayor shall have no administrative or executive powers or duties. The mayor may provide citizens with names and phone numbers or email addresses into specific departments of city government or assistance with citizen questions, but the mayor may not direct the city staff as to the solution or action responding to any such concerns. Any issue raised by citizens or the city council concerning the level of appropriateness of city responses or services shall be discussed with the city manager and not directly with any subordinate employee. The functions of the City Council. Duties. As the legislative branch of the city government, the City Council passes ordinances, appropriates funds, establishes policy, and performs such other duties and responsibilities as are required or permitted by law. The City Council may review the city manager's accomplishments of the City Council's directives expressed to the city manager in the form of ordinances and written resolutions. Legislative acts. The City Council's will is expressed by ordinance, resolution, declaration, budget approval, and other written statements of policy and concern. In every case, the will of the City Council shall be expressed by a majority vote of the City Council. No statement or act of any individual member of the governing body shall be viewed as the will of the City Council. City manager responsibilities to the City Council. As the executive branch of the city government, the city manager shall manage all executive and administrative powers and activities of the city and will be responsible to the City Council to see that these powers and activities are consistent with and fulfill the City Council's policies as expressed in ordinances and resolutions adopted by the City Council. The responsibility to execute the policies of the City Council lies with the city manager. So I wanted to read that to try to help everybody understand over the next 2 years what the form of government we've been under for a number of years and will stay for the next 2 until we actually make that change. Okay, since that is all of our communications, we will open citizen comments. There are 2 opportunities this evening for citizens to speak. Since we have 2 public hearings, if you are here and you would like to address either of those issues, you will have the opportunity for those items at a later point in the meeting. If you are here to discuss anything else, whether it's something that is on the consent calendar, a business item, or something that is not on the agenda, this will be your opportunity in the meeting to discuss those things. You have a 3-minute time limit, and our clerk will watch that, so you can kind of watch that timer as you come up here. And I will start with those that have signed up in advance to talk to us today. First one, Alexander Efremo.
Council, I'm very unhappy with what's happening.
In the January the West Jordan Journal, it says here that Ryden went ahead, and this is his article, and it says here he's recommending that we hold work-study meetings prior to city council meetings from 5 to 6 p.m., 15 p.m. in the community room. The council will be voting on tonight to move the start time of council meeting to 6:30 p.m. to implement the work-study sessions. I am 1,000,000% against that. Number three, we have 3 people on the council that have active jobs. They work until 5 p.m. And the people in this council that come and attend the council meetings, many of them have jobs. They have to get up in the morning to go to work. There are a lot of people here that have school. They have to get up in the morning to go to school. So I am 1,000,000% against having that council start at 6:30. Ryden, you're wrong to present that. And then instead of you having the nerve not to put it on the agenda, here White Rock has it on business agenda. So I'm against that. And I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm counting my blessings. I want us to 1 minute count our blessings. Thank you. Okay, I want to continue. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to continue, but my other one is with White Rock. She went ahead and in the 2 days before in November, I presented an editorial to the West Jordan Journal. They did not publish it for the December Journal. They waited until January. They gave White Rock my editorial, because I found a full-page ad that said, "Thank you for people for voting." It was Salt Tribune. Hello, people are now reading the paper on their internet. There was no right to go ahead. I'm continuing on that because I have a big problem with that. Thank you.
We have a citizen group, Brandon Anderson. Do you want to come up and? Citizen group, so they get 5 minutes.
Thank you, Council. I'm representing Maple Hills. We are the development over by the fire station, which has had issues in the past of sinking and which is currently sinking again. Representing a group of us who are concerned that our houses are sinking. Some of us are concerned that our houses will sink, and some of us concerned that even if their houses don't sink, their property values are going to be negatively affected. We have a number of us here tonight. I also have a sheet of 17 individuals, homeowners, who couldn't make it tonight. I'm going to run through the list of what we know and what we're here to ask the Council's help for. Back in 2008, the City Council had a meeting where the developer asked to have the soil issues removed from the plat. The City Council at that time voted 7-0 in favor of keeping the soil notes on the plat, as well as having a certificate of present conditions recorded with the County Recorder's Office so that homeowners would be made aware of these issues before they bought through title and disclosures. Neither of those items happened. Back on 5/7/13 in the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Ellen Smith asked what standards would be used to determine if the collapsible soils had been mitigated and whether or not the city could be sued due to issues with collapsible soils after we sign off. Nathan Nelson said the city requires geotechnical investigations to ensure that the soils are capable of supporting foundations, roads, etc. The applicant's geotechnical engineer has been taking and testing samples, and they are producing a map showing location and depth of the soils. Staff hasn't seen the full extent of the plan with mitigation, but once they are identified, they will be excavated and removed from the site or wasted in areas that will not be supporting buildings or roadways. Mr. Nelson stated that part of the geotechnical consultant's responsibility is not only to prepare the plan, but to ensure on-site inspections are handled during excavation, and then to provide the written reports to the city's satisfaction that it has been executed. He then said if there are failures, they will look back to the license and credentials of the geotechnical engineer to bear the responsibility for the improper handling of the soils. Then on 5/16/13, GSH, the geotechnical company, did a supplemental report of geotechnical study noting collapsible soils and recommendations. They stated the average depth of issues was between 10 and 12 feet and could go up to depths as large as 16 feet. On 5/22/13, the council meeting in agenda item 7A, the ratification of density for Maple Hills preliminary development plan, conditions of approval, item 9. Unless completely mitigated to the satisfaction of the city engineer, a note shall be placed on the plat indicating specifically what lots in the phase are affected by collapsible soils. A separate document shall be recorded with the county recorder's office, which specifically states that these lots are within a sensitive soil area. This enables title companies to become aware of the situation, and therefore the information can be relayed to the future property owner. A certificate of present conditions is a typical document that is recorded for these type of situations. Once again, neither of these items happened. According to City Ordinance 11-316, cuts and fills, Section F, compaction, all fills shall be placed, compacted, inspected, and tested in accordance with the provisions of this title and the land disturbance design and construction standards. If the strict enforcement of the compaction provisions of this subsection is determined by the city engineer to be unnecessary because of the proposed or probable use of the land, the city engineer may waive the requirements. The requirements of this subsection shall not be waived when structures are to be supported by the fill. In the Land Design and Construction Standards, Section 2.8, Grading and Excavation, Section D, Fills, all work performed under this item shall be under the direct supervision of a registered geotechnical engineer. The developer shall be responsible for design and obtaining approval of the design from the city prior to proceeding with construction. A geotechnical engineer shall also have a representative at the site during all times work is being performed. The geotechnical engineer and his staff shall be retained by the city and directly paid for by the city from a deposit for this work from the developer. It appears from our investigation that the geotechnical firm was paid for and secured by the developer, not the city. On 8/23/13, the development agreement recorded with the county recorder's office. No mention of collapsible soils. On 9/12/13, Kilgore did removal of potentially hydrocollapsible soils. GSH visited the site to observe on September 12th, 16th, 20th, and October 3rd. It doesn't appear that an engineer was present at all times. On 10/18/13, GSH did their daily report for soil compaction. On 11/1/13, they issued their observation of removals letter. It said, based on these observations, it is our opinion that removal areas defined in the reference report were over-excavated to the depths indicated in the report of 10 feet. No follow-up testing seems to be done except for observations and in-place moisture and density testing to depths of 6 feet. We're not curious why they didn't over-excavate to depths of 12 to 16 feet when it was noted that they could go that deep, and also why they didn't do more extensive testing than just observation and moisture when we know that there was major issues with the fire station. On 3/12/14, the First Amendment to the development agreement was done. No mention of collapsible soils. On 4/30/14, Maple Hills Phase 1A subdivision plat does not have mention of notes of collapsible soils. On 12/19/17, I talked to Nate Nelson on the phone. He said he was not aware of the City Council voting to have the soil issues noted on the plat or disclosed to homeowners. He also stated that he was aware that it was not noted on the plat, but does not recall making the decision it didn't need to be noted on the plat. He then proceeded to tell me that it is in the past and at this point it doesn't really matter, and that it wasn't noted on the plat or disclosed to homeowners. It does really matter. It is affecting our lives. We all have bills that are going to be anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000. Everybody thinks it's going to be really easy just to go get a lawyer and litigate. Most of us have very small home builders who probably, even if we win a judgment against them, won't be able to pay for that. We are here to ask the city to do what they said they would do back in the planning and zoning meeting back in May of 2013, to hold the geotechnical company responsible to make sure that we don't have a whole bunch of homes go foreclosure where we end up having families lose everything, and that is what we're here to ask for. So I ask you please to look at that. Something other note, Mayor Riding, thank you very much for meeting with myself and one of our neighbors the other day and directing us how to get this done. We want to go through the proper channels. We want to work with people who are willing to help us, but we need help. We were instructed to come to this meeting tonight, which that's what we're here for. We're also instructed to set up an appointment with Wendell Rigby for Monday. That meeting unfortunately had to get canceled. So my question now would be, what would be our next steps? How do we follow up on this? Where do we go from here?
Is that it, Brandon? Because staff will get back with you.
Okay. So did they just contact me directly and then we set up whatever else we need to do to take care of this or find out our next steps?
Yes, they will.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Steve Jones.
Mayor, Council, my name is Steve Jones. I live at 3234 West, 6920 South. I've understood some things in the last little while that kind of bring a little analogy to mind. If I go and bake a cake and I put frosting on it and I look at that cake, it looks wonderful. But if I haven't done a very good job of baking the cake, while the outside exterior looks wonderful, the inside can be pretty rotten. And I apply that analogy the same way that we look at the city. If we look at the city and we look at all the outside stuff and it looks pretty and it looks nice, yeah, that's great. But if the support things internal to that are not functioning right, or we're losing individuals that support our city, then it becomes kind of, I won't say caustic, but we lose those expertise. It's important for our city council to continually evaluate where our different departments are and whether we're losing those individuals that through time and training that we've paid for, losing them to other agencies. We had the same issue, I think, back in the 90s, where we basically were a training ground for Salt Lake County Fire, and we were losing our firefighters after they were going through all their basic training and getting them up to speed, and they were paying more and the guys left. This continually applies to other departments and agencies within our city. So as a new council starting a new year, I am aware of one department that's taken a pretty good hit, losing those people that are the backbone of that department. And I kind of find that troubling, just like I did many years ago when I saw that happening with the fire department. So I ask you, as a council, to, if we need to upgrade things and make sure that there's plans in place for these guys and gals and individuals to progress so that they feel like they have a great job experience for the city of West Jordan, then we should have those things. I did see the same thing when I started in engineering, where we lost all the guys in the middle that had 12 and 13 years experience because the economy took off. And what we were left with was the guys that were ready to retire and the new guys that were just barely coming in that I was part of, and we didn't know our one foot from the other. We were still learning. I look at those as being critical to make sure that we have plans in place to accommodate the changes that happen in our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any others that would like to come and take 3 minutes and speak at the podium? If you do, make sure you give your name and contact information. Okay. Seeing none, we will close citizen comments. Let's say move to the consent calendar. And so far I've been asked to pull consent 7D, 7E, and 7F. So is there a motion? Or, Councilmember McConaughey, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick clarification, was that B as in Bravo that was asked to be pulled, or D as in Delta?
B as in Bravo, E as in Easy, F as in Frank.
I move to approve all consent items except for B as in Bravo, E as in Echo, F as in
D. We have one more that wants to be pulled. D as in dog. So there are 4. B as in Bravo, D as in dog, E as in easy, F as in Frank. We have a motion and a second on the table.
I'll second it. Are
Which
you?
did not include D, sorry.
Are,
Discussion to the motion.
oh, but it,
So basically, we're approving A and C?
Say again?
So basically, we are approving consent items A and C? Is that correct? If we're pulling B, D, E, and F?
Well, B did not make it on the motion.
I will rescind my motion
Sorry.
because there was a change. When I made the motion, it was, D had not been requested to be removed. It was clarified that it was B as in Bravo. So D is currently included with my motion to approve. So if there's a request to approve that, I will just rescind the motion to approve anything. And we can start over.
So let's try this again. We have B as in boy, D as in dog, E as in easy, F as in Frank to be pulled from the consent calendar. We have a motion for those.
I'd also like to pull C, so I would move that we approve consent item A.
Thank you. Those are my minutes. Thank you. You have a new version.
so the motion.
Councilmember Anderson.
The motion is to approve item A, and I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Mayor Whiting?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
The vote passes 7 in favor.
Okay, we'll take up resolution B. Approve resolution 18-01 authorizing the mayor to execute a betterment agreement between the UDOT and West Jordan City for the installation of 2 20-inch water lines for the 70th South Bangor Highway Interchange Project in an amount not to exceed $219,386. Councilmember Burton. I'm sorry?
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I would recommend that we proceed with the public hearing, since there may be folks here specifically for those public hearings, and have the consent items that were not approved as the first business item, but proceed first with the public hearing. That would be my recommendation to the
Do
chair.
we need a yea or nay vote, Mel? Okay. I will agree with that, and so we'll move to public hearings. Public hearing item 8A. Receive public input and consider for approval ordinance 18-02 regarding a rezone of approximately 2.78 acres from R-1-8A, single-family residential 8,000 square foot lots, zoned to R-3-8 SHO, multifamily residential, 8 units per acre, maximum density, senior housing overlay, zoned for property located at 7292 South Redwood Road, Cannon and Company, Gary Cannon applicant, Scott Langford.
Thanks, Mayor. We have Lisa Elgin, our associate planner, here to give the council and the public a summary of the request. Lisa.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The project before you right now pertains to a 2.78 acre parcel located at 7292 South Redwood Road, and the applicant is requesting rezone to R38 with a senior housing overlay. The parcel is zoned R18A and general plan designated as high density residential. Scott, could you? Oh. Okay, thank you. As you can see, the parcels to the north and the parcels in the little cutout area next to it are designated the same. To the west, across Redwood Road, and to the south, they are also zoned R18, but designated medium density residential. And the parcel to the south is zoned R38, but designated very high density residential. On this slide, this is a conceptual diagram that the applicant provided to us. However, this is not a site plan review, so this is just conceptual at this point, but this is what they envision the parcel to look like in the future. At the Planning Commission meeting, we talked about the small little sliver on top, and that's discussed in your staff report. The applicant actually got together and talked a little bit with that property owner, and he expressed an interest in trying to do some kind of a land swap with that parcel and that landowner. The parcel at this point complies with all the requirements of the proposed zone district. So based on the analysis and findings contained in the staff report, staff recommends that the City Council rezone the subject parcel as recommended by the Planning Commission. And if you have any questions, you can take those.
Any questions for staff from council?
Mayor, if I could just add a bit of information too. Since this is a proposed senior housing overlay, one of the requirements as far as the process goes is if the council does indeed rezone the property tonight, they will follow up with a preliminary development plan, which will come back to the council and to lock down the exact design. In fact, the next item on your agenda is just such an item where they're coming back. That was, item 8B was rezoned earlier this year, and they're now coming back to get the details of that senior development approved by the council. So just a little bit of education as far as the process goes.
Would the applicant like to address council? We'd like to allow you 10 minutes for that, so it doesn't go very long.
Well, thank you. My name's Gary Cannon. I'm so redundant because this process has gone on about a year, and I respect the opinions and the education process with the new mayor and the new council. Some of you will feel a little bit redundant the education I give you. I'm a business owner in West Jordan. My grandparents moved West Jordan in the 30s, and I'm proud to be a property owner here as well. Right now in the United States, there are 10,000 people turning 65 a day. 90% of those people turning 65 do not have a viable option as far as housing goes if they would like to downsize. What I'm presenting to you tonight on this one and finishing up on the next one is what I wouldn't really classify as a high density as much as it is. These are single family homes with yards. They are not attached. They will carry a price of over $300,000. This is not low income housing. This is a product that is meant for 55 or older home buyers who I'll be 55 in 2 years, and this is a viable option of something my parents are in their 70s on a half acre in Riverton. They are searching for this type of product, and so these will be 12 to 1,400 square foot homes with 2-car garages. Another interesting fact that I would like to bring to play is that the empty nester buyer now, 81% of the time, their buying decision is being made by their pet. And that's why we feel like this is a nice option. We have yards. The property to the direct north, as she stated, is very high density. This is to the south, is a very high density. There are apartments. The property to the north, there are 2 long sliver properties that we would like to work with the property owners if they're interested in selling. I have not spoken with them at this time. I have spoken with one of the neighbors out in front on Redwood Road. We've had a couple of good discussions now. The property next to the long slivers are storage units, and then north of that is the Desert Industries. The property to the west is some larger homes. We feel like we'll be good compatible neighbors to them, and we will enhance their values. This particular one we're going to do, it's going to be a little bit higher home prices than the one we'll talk about next. There'll be large brick pillars We are working on renderings to present to you in our next meeting with some fake gates, and when I say fake, I don't mean fake, immovable gates that are permanently in place to give it the appearance that it is a gated community, but they will not be movable. They will be open. We also added, based on our last one, we added more green space. That was a couple of the recommendations of the Planning, Zoning, and the City Council. And I am open to your questions as you need.
Any questions for the applicant? Councilmember McConaughey.
Actually, I had a question for staff earlier, but I'll wait till we come back to that.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, Alan, you jumped in there.
I did while you weren't looking. So my question is, it mentions in the packet that you'll be required to create an HOA. Does that include the maintenance of the yards and like the little sliver of land? Is that, I mean, I guess I'm asking who's responsible to maintain these little sliver?
You are correct that the HOA will include full maintenance front and back of the yard and all of the common areas. That sliver of ground, I kind of inherited that, and it doesn't nobody any good other than the property owner that it sits next to, and it has been discussed that maybe we do some type of a land trade to give. It's not going to create any more density for me. I won't add any more lots. It might make a couple of the lots a little bit larger, and it would benefit them as far as width goes. But we haven't even had a survey done to determine exactly how that would affect the subdivision. But it will go away. And I believe the Planning Commission did not approve the rezone of that sliver. I think, is that correct? Everything but that.
Okay, but just out of curiosity, how wide is that sliver?
I think it's 10 feet. There's really, if you looked at it, you can barely tell there's even a sliver there because the houses are so close to each other. From the Redwood Road, you couldn't tell there's a sliver there, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Good question.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
At this time, I'd open this for public hearing. If there's anyone present who would like to address the council on this issue, please come to the podium. Please come to the podium. State your name and contact information.
Alexandra Ephraimo, 3735 Judd Circle in West Jordan. I don't know, the last couple of times we've had people come up that are going ahead and building again, and Mr. Cannon saying that the homes are going to be $300,000. Hello, folks. How about the poor 65 and 55-year-old people that are retiring? $300,000 is a lot. And I'm suggesting to build a home less than $300,000. Let's bring it down to $250,000 or $200,000. I don't think if you're a senior that you're already past the 50%. Okay, you're over the hill. So to go ahead and say that you want to go into a $300,000 home, my home is $200,000. Okay, I bought it and it was $99,000, so it's come up to $200,000. But I'm a senior, but still, if you're going to buy a home that's $300,000, you still have to pay pretty high taxes, pretty high all the other amenities that go with a $300,000 home. So I'm suggesting to Mr. Cannon to reduce and not build such expensive homes. I don't think if you do a survey of people that are retiring, they don't want high taxes. They want, if you're retiring, unless you build with a company and you have a retirement with that company, you're still on Social Security, or maybe you may have a little bit more, but that's a lot of money. $300,000. The last couple times we had people that came up, they are building $300,000 homes. but now you're focusing, you're stating a senior housing area, and I'm sorry, and I saw that outlay, well, not this one, but the other, the thing before that. Again, we have a street that goes into nowhere. I don't know how we can get it, the other plat that is, but I didn't like the outlay anyway, the way that he has a small street that goes into a dead end. How can a fire truck or go into it? But anyway, I'm just saying to lower that price from $300,000 to the house to be down to either $200,000 or $250,000. You don't need to build that exorbitant of a house. Let's think about the poor people that are 55 and older, not the rich billionaires. Thank you.
Is there, please, thank you. No clapping. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the comments, the citizens' comments, and move to a motion. We have Councilmember Conahay.
Thank you, Mark. Not necessarily a motion yet, but just discussion at this point. I wanted to point out that the motion recommended by staff and also the Planning Commission recommendation, although on the screen it shows that little sliver of property, I just want to call out that it was recommended that we not change the zoning for that small little piece. So if we approve what's been presented in the staff report, it's just going to be that sort of inverse Utah, flag Utah. Either way, the patriotic-shaped parcel you see on the screen. Thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for staff, if I may. Is there any reason why they're asking, or why this proposal is for an R38 when single-family homes are what's being proposed? Why are we going multifamily on the proposal, on the question?
It essentially boils down to the density that they're requesting. The 8 stands for 8 units per acre, and given that's just the tools that we're given to work with. There's not really a single family zone that would carve out lots that small and create that density. So.
Okay, so in an R38, it's 8 units per acre, not 8,000 square foot lots.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. What do we know what the average size is on these on the proposal? I'm just wondering what it is that we're actually asking for as far as zoning goes. I see them, but I don't read them.
The applicant has that information, but I can pull that up too.
We're in that 4,000 to 5,000 square foot range. Backyards are about 20 feet with 5-foot side yards.
Thank you. All right, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
I just have a question. That back street looks really narrow, so if there was a call for emergency services, is this adequate to service that?
The preliminary design that you see on the screen has been reviewed by the fire department. However, it is just a concept. We'll look at that in greater detail as they take the next step if the council does design or does approve the rezone. But we'll make sure that we address that in their development plan if this does move forward.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you. One question I had, I drive on Redwood Road on a frequently basis since I live there, and I see cars turning in and out of these entrances on a daily basis, and sometimes it can be very dangerous. What does the city do as we move forward on this to make sure that that entrance and exit is something that's viable, not only for the residents that live there so it's safe, so that the people that are driving Redwood Road won't have accidents? I mean, you can't prevent accidents, but are there some steps that are taken by the city to make sure that that's a viable entrance for everyone?
A lot of that discussion has occurred with our engineering staff. However, Redwood Road is a state road, and the applicant, I'm sure, can address this better than I can, but they've had to coordinate with UDOT. You can see it looks like the entrance and exit has definitely flared to what it is currently. But that coordination needs to take place with the state. Our traffic engineers looked at again, this is a preliminary design, and we'll put that on our report if this does move forward. So, yeah.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in response to Councilmember Lamb's question, my personal thought would be, right now you've got a lot of homes that are fronting Redwood Road, so it's not uncommon to have a vehicle backing out of the driveway into traffic on Redwood Road. Where this is a much longer approach, I think although there's probably going to be a little bit more traffic because obviously there's more units there, by virtue of the fact that you don't have anybody backing out, I think it's going to be a little bit safer. So that's just my own personal opinion.
I see no other discussion. Is there a motion? Oh, Councilmember Jacob.
Yeah, I'm prepared for a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve ordinance 18-02 as stated in the packet.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jacob and a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Discussion to the motion? Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quick clarification from staff. So just by the simple motion approving this ordinance, that does not include that little remnant strip, correct? We don't need to add anything saying exclude that. We're good with what we've got?
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are there any other comments to the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilmember Whitelock? Yes. Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
The vote passes 7 in favor.
Okay, public hearing item 8B, receive public input and consider for approval a preliminary development plan for cottages at Parker Place located at 7410 South Redwood Road in the R-3-8 SHO zoning district. Cannon and Company, Gary Cannon applicant, Scott Langford.
Thanks, Mayor. This is just down the road from the property we just spoke about. We've got Larry Gardner that can give us a summary of this request.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This property came in, was rezoned in 2017. As you remember, it used to be R18 also. And the land use map wasn't changed, but it was rezoned to an R3-8. And as Mr. Langford pointed out, one of the reasons was to accomplish the 4,000 square foot lot that's allowed in R3-8, but also to accommodate the senior housing overlay. Senior housing overlay is generally not put on single family or R18 type properties, and so, but anyway, he rezoned this property twofold, this to an R3-8, and as you recall, this portion out here right in front of Majestic Elementary to professional office. There's already a interested party in building their office and moving to West Jordan for that parcel, but we're not discussing that tonight. That's not part of this development plan. That'll be a separate site plan that will go to the Planning Commission. This is the preliminary plat that was approved by the Planning Commission. And what the City Council is approving tonight is the development plan, which establishes the residential density of 7 units per acre, and then also the building materials, the style of the home, the walls, the street light, and that type of thing. This is not a huge project. It's overall with the office only a little over 2 acres, and so there wasn't much opportunity for any open space. However, it does accomplish a need in society right now for the single-family home with the small yard. Now, it will be in a homeowners association, and there will be a deed restriction per our ordinance that a person has to be 55 years or older. Also, the homes are only 2-bedroom, so they do not, it's not intended to ever be a traditional single-family neighborhood. It is only for seniors that have either passed that or have never wanted to participate in that, but however, they're 55 years or older. And the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the preliminary development plan, and staff does likewise, finding that it meets all the ordinances and criteria of both the zoning ordinance as well as the senior housing overlay. Do you have any questions for me?
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So as I'm looking at the packet for tonight, it doesn't appear that we have the preliminary development plan included. We have the 2-page ordinance, but there's nothing else to go along with that.
Okay. So I don't prepare the packets to give to you. I do have one here, but if you don't have it, then I would feel it's probably not appropriate to ask you to approve something you don't have. I was under the assumption you have it, but
unless somebody else has seen something, I'm missing something. Online, we only have the 2 pages, and it referenced the public hearing that we held in City Council on December 17th.
Now, it is on the website, because I printed this staff report off of the website.
The 2-page staff report's on the website, but the plan that you were showing up there earlier, I didn't see.
Well, because I printed this like an hour ago off of the website under the... So.
Yeah,
Mr. McCaw, I don't know what else to say.
It is there. Public hearings. Now I'm opening up public hearing 8B.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is the style of home that he's going to build, and you can see it's very accommodating to people that don't want stairs, because it's they will have basements, but it's a slab on grade home more or less.
Councilmember Anderson.
I'm going to wait for right now. I'm still looking up stuff.
Okay. Are we okay?
Well, yes and no. The way it's positioned on the website is it looks like you've got a link, public hearing 8B with the word ordinance continued to the second line. And when you click on ordinance, thinking it's just one item out there, you get the 2-page. So the rest of it's up there. So yeah, you click on the ordinance side. It's not clear that it's 2 items instead of 1. So that's not the fault of planning. So
it was because I submitted the ordinance late, so it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, I'll rescind my comment there, and obviously I'm not ready to. Well, we're in question, so I'll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Okay, thanks. Could you back up to the preliminary plat map? Okay, so I can't tell in my packet, and I can't tell on this screen what that large building at the bottom is. Is that a clubhouse? Is that commercial?
Right here?
Yeah.
That was the office I was discussing. This overall is part of the Parker Place development. This is the commercial lot, and so this is the office.
Okay. I must have missed
an
that.
office that a person is going to construct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else on my thing here. We'll open up, allow the applicant to come and take a couple of minutes to talk. Again, 10 minutes, thank you.
Thank you again. I'd like to digress for a moment and address the last one and just say I would love for these to be lesser price. The cost of land in this quarter is up around $300,000 an acre right now, and it's the market will dictate what we end up with, and if we can do them, when we originally started this a year ago, I was projecting costs to be in the high 2s. I'd still love to say that may happen, but it's going to be kind of prohibitive to customization of each individual owner. If they want to finish a basement, if they want to do nicer finishes, that'll obviously escalate the price. But they're going to be as affordable as we can make them. Also, I'd like to address the traffic concern. That is one of mine as well. Obviously, the empty nester, as we age, as we mature, I know that I'm not as quick on my feet and as great as I used to be at oncoming traffic. The city requested a traffic study on this particular one. Rather than fight it, I said I think it's a good idea. So we had a full traffic study done by UDOT. Also, I want to make some points. The city requirement was only 2 fire hydrants. We're putting in 3. We put a larger turnaround down at the end of this street, as well as we're stubbing in the sewer line and additional water line for the residents who live down at the end of the street. Had great cooperation with the neighbors. As you can tell, I've had numerous meetings with them to make sure that this does not. We have the Drake family goat farm that has been there I don't know how many years, but they've had some great meetings with them. This will probably increase their business. There's a 19-foot dirt road there now. We're bringing it right up to city standards with curb gutter and sidewalk. I think this particular project, the price point is, like I pointed out, is going to be a little bit less than the one to the north, simply because we got the land for a lesser price. It was a year ago pricing. Pricing today, land prices have went up 10 to 20% in the last 12 months. So I'm hoping to keep them as affordable as possible. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Councilmember Lamb.
Just one question. The homes look like they'll be great for that area. I actually, like I said, I've lived in this area for over 17 years and actually used to live in the apartments right there on Noted Road, so I know the area very well. My question would be, are you as the developer the one that will be developing the business portion of that, or will that be just left alone and you'll have someone else develop that?
No, I'll be developing that as well. We've got an interested party in that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no more, so I will open this for public hearing. Anybody that wishes to address this issue, please come to the podium, state your name and contact information.
Alexandra Ephraim, 3735 Judd Circle. Again, we have 2 roads there. There's one road there going nowhere. I'm so concerned about safety and fire and dump trucks and medical paramedics going in. There's a road there, and then it stops. It doesn't go anywhere. You've got to back out if you're, to me, I don't see how a fire truck can go in there and then turn around. Where's he going to turn around? It looks like he's going to have to back down on both the left-hand road and then the right-hand road. But anyway, again, I'm glad he said that the homes are going to be lower than $300,000 per home. But that still means they're going to be. You're saying he's complaining because the price of land per acre has gone up. But here we have 8 homes per acre. So I forgot how much he said per acre lot. That the cost of the land was, but you're talking about 8 units per 1 acre. So I still say again, lower housing, we've got to, all over the county, even the county keeps talking about low income. Not everybody's wealthy. They still say 1/3 of the people living in Salt Lake County live in apartments, not houses. Apartments. So let's just do the math on that. How many people do you think are going to be able to afford $280,000 homes? We all would love to have a home. I'm sure all the people in the rentals would love to have a home instead of staying in a rental. So let's think about the poor people and let's get those costs of the homes down. And I don't know. Anyway, that's my main concern is the safety. Those 2 streets that go nowhere, and the fire trucks are going to have to back out. That's my really main concern. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing comments and open it up for council discussion. And Councilmember Whitelock.
Can we just find out from staff if fire has looked at these roads and what their input is?
Yes, the fire marshal has looked at this, and actually this plat's been approved by the planning commission. Neither one of those stems exceed 150 feet, so it does not require a cul-de-sac type turnaround. And yes, they've all been looked at and approved by the fire marshal, or assistant deputy fire marshal, I should say.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Someone would like to make a motion? Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Based on the information set forth in this staff report, and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move the City Council approve the preliminary development plan for the cottages at Parker Place, generally on property located at 7410 South Redwood Road, establishing a residential density of 7 units per acre for a total of 14 single-family residential lots and 1 commercial lot, subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Burton, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion of the motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything against what's been proposed or what we've seen. However, out of principle, it was obviously very clear to everyone here that I have not been able to have enough time to go through the plan in detail. I did watch it when it came through initially to the City Council for a rezone and was supportive there. But just because I haven't gone through in detail, I will be voting in opposition. So my thought process being is if it looked like it didn't have enough support to pass, I would recommend we table it and then bring it back a little bit later. But if I'm going to be the only person in opposition for the reasons stated, I'm hopeful it's approved by the rest of the council. Thank you, Mayor.
I see no other discussion, so we'll go for a roll call vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
No.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
The vote passes 6-1 in favor.
We'll now move to our business items. We'll pick up the consent items at the end. Business item 9A, discussion and possible action regarding Resolution 18-05, confirming the appointment of a council member to serve as mayor pro tem for 2018. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move we appoint Councilmember Anderson as mayor pro tem.
I'll second that for
Lamb.
discussion.
Okay, we have a motion on the table with second discussion to the motion. Councilmember Anderson.
I'm willing to accept that nomination. I appreciate. Don't know what to say. Appreciate the thought. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I just have a question for Councilmember Anderson because at times your schedule seemed a little bit restrictive. So are you going to be able to fill in for the mayor at different meetings? Because I feel it's vitally important that West Jordan have a presence at not just city council meetings. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
I'd like to make a substitute motion and move to place Councilman Jacob as the mayor pro tem.
Substitute motion. Is there a second to that? Seeing no second, the motion fails. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the thought, Councilmember Burton. But it would have been self-serving to second my own name. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Any other discussion to the motion? Councilmember Lamb.
Just real quick, as I did a second for discussion, having worked with all of you over the past few years, I think any one of you could serve as a mayor pro tem. I do see this as an important part of the next year, and understand there are some on here that would like to serve, but I do think that we have a great opportunity here, and I just want all of you to know that each one of you would work well as a mayor pro tem in whatever capacity that is. Thank you.
Let's vote.
Mayor Writing?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Do I vote or abstain?
Yes, you do. No, you vote. Yeah, you can vote for
Yes,
yourself.
I'll commit.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Sure.
The vote passes 7 in favor.
Business item 9B, discussion of possible action.
Mayor, before we move on, could I clarify something?
Please.
Just on the agenda item for 9A, it states that it's the mayor pro tem for 2019. I want to clarify, I believe that vote is for 2018, not 19. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
I'm surprised nobody commented on that.
Thank you. I didn't think you'd want to wait a year anyway. So.
Mayor?
Oh, yes. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just going back to the items on the agenda, I know there are some folks that are here for some of the consent items, and looking at some of the business items, if we hold them till the end, if we hold those consent items until the very end, I worry about the length of time some folks might be required to stay here if they were here for something on consent. I would ask if you would entertain the idea of going through those consent items to see if we might be able to get those before some of the lengthier business items.
I don't have a problem with that. If that's what you like, we can go back to start with the consent item 7B. As approved, resolution 18-01 authorizing the mayor to execute a betterment agreement between the UDOT and West Jordan City for the installation of 2 20-inch water lines for the 70th South Bangor Highway Interchange project in an amount not to exceed $219,386. Wendell Rigby's listed on here, but I think that Councilmember Burton pulled it. Wanted to pull it. So, Councilmember Burton?
Thank you, Mayor. I did. As I was reading in our report on this, it said that, and let me quote to you what it says here. The amount included in this amendment for the secondary water line is under the bridge at 7,000 South, which will be placed in the spring of 2018. This pipe is being placed for the future needs of the city and can also be used for culinary pipe, should the need arise. So I'll stop there. I'm just thinking we're spending $219,000 for a pipeline that we may or may not ever use. I would recommend that we don't put this in until we have a need for it, and then at that time we do it. It's true it may cost more in a future date, but it may not cost less if we never put one in.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Knowing issues we've had in the past working with UDOT getting appropriate right-of-ways when we've had utility issues, I would be inclined to lean towards doing that, but also seeing as I'm guessing Mr. Murphy might have an idea or two. If the chair would approve, I'd like to hear his thoughts as to the rationale or...
No, please, we'd like to have Mr. Murphy come up and address this.
My apologies, Dave.
Future costs on a subject matter like this will be more than double. And the reason for that is once the overpass is finished and the work is finished, UDOT, if we wanted to get back into this road for this purpose, for these pipelines, they would more than likely cause us to bore this intersection and not close it. And that similar cost on the 78 South project cost Jordan Valley over $500,000. So that would not be a recommendation you'd receive from me.
Councilmember Burton.
Mayor, if I may, while you're still up here. Murphy. Almost call you Rigby. Thank you. What are the odds, what are the chances, how high, I can give a percentage, I know it's make believe, you don't have a crystal ball, that we will actually end up needing that? Why would we need that in the future, and what would be the reason for it?
Presently, there's a pipeline placed from the bottom of the hill near the wastewater treatment plant that we completed in phase 1 of this utility project for 70th South that comes up to and through the intersection of 13th and stops there. The second piece of this is underneath Redwood Road, yet to be completed this spring, that completes the piece of this dry pipeline underneath the concrete there. And then this piece under Bangerter Highway leaves the option open to bring water to a facility such as a potential Facebook or data center property out west that would use the water for air conditioning purposes. And that water use for Facebook was over 1 million gallons a day. The reuse water at the treatment plant qualifies and can be used for such a purpose. So it leaves the option open for the city to court other large data centers like eBay, like Oracle, like Facebook, or others for your business park out west. So that's the likelihood. Whether or not that's a percentage or not in any realm right now, I'm not going to guess. But this is following that idea through fruition that previous councils had authorized. This previous council has authorized $1.8 million for the 2 interchanges to get some of this utility work done. This is one of those items under that $1.8 million cap.
And while you're still here, if you could help me with my memory a little bit, didn't we have a study done on the costs and likelihood of using secondary water getting pumped up from that? And we had determined that due to the cost and likelihood that we probably would not do that. Does that sound right?
That sounds right, and that's the recollection. However, this portion of this work was already in design when that financial feasibility was finally adopted and completed. Phase 1 of this work was already completed. We did ramp backwards and take pipeline out of 70th South that could have gone in under the 2B construction. And so the pipeline was removed and limited only to the concrete sections. Bangerter Highway is one of your concrete sections. And it's very difficult to get back in there and work with UDOT to get that done. So is Redwood Road. So that's the reason those 2 sections still have this dry pipe in there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor, but that actually answered my question, so I'm good. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Seeing that, I move to approve Resolution 18-01, authorizing the mayor to execute a betterment agreement between the UDOT and West Jordan City for the installation of 2 20-inch water lines for the 70 South Bangerter Highway Interchange project in an amount not to exceed $219,386,000.
Councilmember Anderson. Second.
Oh, sorry. I got to push the button.
It's like Jeopardy.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion of the motion. Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilmember Burton?
No.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
The vote passes 6-1 in favor.
Approve Resolution 18-02, authorizing the mayor to execute Amendment Number 12 to the professional service agreement with Stanley Consultants, Inc. for the 70th South Phase 2 utility design project in an amount not to exceed $162,405. And I'm not sure, so we'll go to Councilmember Burton.
I pulled that for simplicity of getting through our consented part. I have no reason to discuss this further than what's in the packet, so I move to approve.
Second, with comments.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Burton and a second by Councilmember McConaughey. So Councilmember McConaughey, you have discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Very much support this. I also want to thank Stanley Consultants for being patient with us as we've tried to work through everything necessary to get it to this point. They've been more than patient with us, and it's been a project that hasn't gone exactly as anticipated. So just want to publicly let them know how much we appreciate them. So thank you, Mayor.
Seeing no other discussion, roll call vote.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Consent item 7D, as in dog, approve resolution 18-03, declaring items from various city departments that are no longer of any value or use as surplus property, and authorize the disposition. Councilmember Whitelock.
I ask that we pull this just because I called Chief Diamond to inquire about the process, and I thought a couple of good reminders were given. One that I knew, but I haven't done it for a few decades, so it's probably what I have is probably out of date. That if we have our serial numbers of our items, then it's easier for the police to return our items. Also, due to storage, there's a 90-day period that they hold those items. So just kind of reminding myself and everyone else that if you are a victim or you lose something, hopefully you have the serial number, then you can call the police department to get it back. Or if they do contact you, that 90-day is a pretty firm line. So make sure you get there. Thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent item D, as in Delta. Oh, wait, that's one we're on. Yes, D as in Delta. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton. Second. We have a motion on the table and a second. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
The vote passes 7 in favor.
7E, approve ordinance 18-01, amending the 2009 West Jordan Title I Administration, Chapter 7, Article D, Section 5, regarding city manager residency. We have Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I'll let Councilmember Whitelock speak first.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Thank you. The reason I asked to have this pulled separately is because I think the reason it's being done is for a specific person. And I understand that our form of government will change and that this will change things as well in 2 years. But that is 2 years away, and I just don't believe it's good policy to change code for an individual circumstance. So I am not in favor of this I just think it's bad policy. I think there are other ways to accomplish what I think is trying to be accomplished with this.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Happy for the opportunity to clarify. I agree. It's not good policy to change code for one particular person. That's just not right. In this particular instance, we do have code that's referencing one particular position, but our code is also not compliant with our form of government or state law. So what you see on the screen right now is where it's, well, this is the legislative markup suggesting that that section B be removed. But right here, this is how we are currently governed. We have to go, you can't pull the law online. We have to go back to the books from 1977. So this was manually transcribed from those papers. You can see where it says appointment of a municipal manager. The manager shall be appointed solely on the basis of his abilities, integrity, and prior experience relating to the duties of the office. And then it goes on to elaborate on the duties of the office. Where this is saying the city manager shall be appointed solely on the basis of their abilities, I don't think our code is compliant with state law by adding something like residency to the list of requirements. I think you can argue either side as to whether or not the residency is beneficial for the person or not. But from my reading of state law, it doesn't seem like that can be a valid criteria for the decision, let alone a criteria that's codified, which is why I'm suggesting we remove this from our law.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had the chance to talk to each one of you about this and get your feelings on how it is. And while in theory it might look like it's being changed for just one person to make a decision for 2 years, I do feel that the policy that was set forth might not have been what's best for us in this day and age. Even if it isn't that one person, I do feel like there's a lot more people out there that could serve West Jordan, whether or not they live in the city or not. It has changed over the years. You know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, you would want that person to live in the city, but at this time we do have an interim city manager who does not live in our city and is doing a great job and doesn't live here, and I just believe that this will help us in the short term. Obviously, things will change over the next 2 years, but I'm in full agreement to approve this. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I disagree with Councilmember McConaughey. I don't think that I think you can add things to this code. I think we're just saying our city manager that's an additional requirement. I don't think we're going against state code by doing so. In addition, I strongly feel that the person that's in charge of our city should live with the consequences of their decisions, because otherwise, where's my foot in the game? If I'm just deciding what everyone else is going to live with, how does that affect me? It doesn't. So that's going to change my perspective on how I vote. I think that's why elected officials are required to live in their jurisdictions. So I strongly feel that we should not change this, and that we should have a requirement. We're a city of over 110,000. We're a huge landmass. We have everything from small apartments to million-dollar homes. So there are plenty of opportunities for a city manager to choose something that their family could like. So I strongly feel that I actually feel all of our department heads should live in our city. I think it's just helpful to the citizens. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I used to live in St. Louis County, and I learned at that time in St. Louis City had a requirement that all city employees were required to live in the city. I'm not recommending that. I didn't think that was good for them, but I can see where they got the idea from and why they were using that as theirs. I don't want to make a change on this code. However, in saying that, that has nothing to do with who is at the helm right now. We've got Dave Brickey, who's doing a fantastic job, and I would like to see him continue, but I would like to see him continue in the position he's in right now. So instead of changing this code so we can suit what that need is, I think we ought to just keep him in the interim position that he's in right now and let it stay there for the next 2 years. If we try to get an official as a city manager and put it out for applications or whatever, I don't think we'll get anyone better than who is already here. So I would like to just see him continue in that spot, in that position, and go on with that. It'll save us the trouble of having to change the code to meet those needs. And then another advantage to this would be if he became the actual city manager in 2 years, when he retired from that position, according to state code, we would have to give him a severance of 6 months. So we'd be paying him for 2 years and 6 months for the 2 years' work. And it's very likely he could continue on in that, but if we keep him in the position he is now and he doesn't go into a new position there, he could go back to his old position as the city attorney, which I think he did a fantastic job. So I would like to just let it go like it is, not change any of this, because it'll all change in 2 years, and let him continue to sail the ship.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. These are interesting discussions. And in principle, I agree with most of what has been said, however, we have a reality that we're facing as a city, and that is in 2 years, the city manager job as such, as it is now, will not exist. Which means if we require somebody who is otherwise qualified, first of all, finding a qualified city manager who already lives within the city of West Jordan, who's willing to take the job for 2 years, may be slim pickings. I'm not saying there aren't great, wonderful people in the city of West Jordan. That's not what I'm saying. There may even be great city manager candidates in the city of West Jordan. However, getting somebody to want to come in and take what is essentially a temp job for 2 years, it's a reality that we're facing. That said, in other words, then, I'm okay with widening the pool a little bit here so that we can keep our city manager. I would like to remove the interim title, and to do that, we have to pass this. I don't think it's all that much trouble. It's a vote that we have in about 3 minutes, and it'll take about 10 seconds, and we'll be done. It's not a lot of trouble. It's all, the work's been done. The issue is keeping that title interim on there, and I really don't want to do that. I think it weakens our position when our city manager and our mayor go out together to regional boards and represent the city elsewhere. To have that interim title on there delegitimizes the position. And while it is interim anyway, because in 2 years it's going to change, for those 2 years, it cuts us off at the kneecaps, and I think it's appropriate to make our interim city manager, or at least to have somebody be a permanent city manager for 2 years. I like who we have. I think he's doing a wonderful job. I'm not wanting to go out and look for somebody else who's willing to come move to the city for 2 years. I don't think it's going to happen, and I don't want to proceed under the title of interim for 2 years. That's interim. It goes against the definition of the word interim. And with that, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve consent item C.
I would second that for consent item E as an echo.
We have a motion on the table by Councilmember Jacob with a second by Councilmember McConaughey. A discussion of the motion. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for our acting city attorney. In order to make this change, does this need to go through a public hearing, or can we just do it like we are right now?
To make this change, you don't have to have a public hearing on it.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
No.
Councilmember Whitelock?
No.
Mayor Writing?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
The vote passes 5-2 in favor.
7F, approve resolution 18-04 regarding a request for a reduced rate of fees from the old Glory Vintage Dancers to reserve the Pioneer Hall. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief, since obviously I'm in support of this, and this was pulled by folks who had questions. So just a quick overview. Old Glory Vintage Dancers have been using Pioneer Hall for quite some time. They've been out there, I believe it's 2 Tuesdays a month. They're not asking for a complete waiver of fees, but they are asking for a reduction of fees. It's not 100% clear in the council packet just because of the order of operations, but this is very similar to service in lieu of fees. They regularly help out at the 4th of July events, so that's something that when folks help out with that, we typically waive fees for them in their entirety, so they're not asking for that, just a reduction. I would also point out that they are here. I know that the time to speak on that was during citizen comments. However, if there's anybody that has specific questions for them, it is the discretion of the chair to allow those questions to be directed to the applicants themselves. So I just wanted to point out that the grants are here. And with that, I would return the floor for whatever questions or concerns there may be.
I have a procedural question, I think, for our interim city attorney. This was on a consent item, but in the packet, it's given us two options, an option 1 and an option 2. Option 1 was to approve the resolution. Option 2 was to deny the resolution. How would that work on a consent item if it was to have gone through as a consent item?
That might have been. Sorry, Mayor. That might have been a mistake. Let me pull that item up. But yet, and I don't know if that was done after, if someone anticipated it was going to be removed, or if they heard it was going to be removed or not. But I don't think it would have worked that way.
I can represent very shortly after Friday's publishing of the initial agenda, I was contacted and advised it would be pulled. And so I knew there was going to be a discussion. In fact, individuals interested in pulling it met with Ms. Briggs and myself. We discussed whether or not to actually put it on as a business item. The request was to leave it where it was so it could be pulled.
Okay, thank you. So if we wanted to, I mean, I guess I'm just not sure exactly how to move ahead. I guess we could just take it the way it is listed here, is, well, I'm still confused, I suppose, because we would need to make one decision or the other, or unless we have a substitute motion on the table. Well, I mean, a substitute different from this, from what's on here, because.
My microphone's now on. The discussion could include an amount, if not $30, an amount less than $30 or greater than $30. As the interim city manager, and it's been the practice of the previous city manager, has been not to approve these type of waivers of fees, to send it to you folks to make that final decision. And the amount we're talking about can be quite significant. It could be a nightly amount as much as $200 or more.
Okay, I would like to just say something here real quick. And I talked to members. Is it Tom? Tom. Talked to Tom this afternoon, and I gave him a little bit of history about me and some of the my history with that building. We remodeled that building about 9 years ago. Spent about $450,000 doing it. It's not seismically sound. It's a very fragile building. If you've been in there, you understand, you know what that building is like. We know that before too long we need to refinish the wood floor, and that wood floor is old. Probably before too long we'd probably have to replace that wood floor. Because of the responsibilities I had with the city previous to this, I have seen some things happen in that building that I was very disappointed in the renters that used that building and the condition it was left in and used. Of all the buildings in the city, and I explained this to Tom too, that's the one building I'm very hesitant. In fact, my feeling is I don't want to reduce the fees for that building. Other buildings, service in lieu of fees, I would probably be fine with. But it's that one building because of the very sensitive nature, the fragile building that it is. It's built in 1869 or something like that. And it's just an old building. It was fun when they remodeled it and they opened it up. I could see what was up in the roof area and the trusses. And in my mind, I'm going, those people were building this 150 years ago or whatever. And it was just a fun thing to see and do. And so and this is just a personal thing on for me. That's the one building in the city I would not want to see those fees reduced for. And I know that Councilmember McConaughey has brought you over here and took a look at this building too, to perhaps practice here as well. Maybe there's things that can be worked out. But again, it's going to be up to the council to decide whatever happens. And maybe I'll just go ahead and make a motion, which would be option 2. I move to deny Resolution 1804, not reducing the fees associated with the use of Pioneer Hall for the Old Glory Vintage Dancers. And that motion fails for a lack of a second. So, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to take us on a little bit of a tangent just for a moment. Going back to what you mentioned about the concerns with the unique aspects of the building, some of the unique features. Right now, it's currently available for pretty much anybody to rent for any reason whatsoever. This doesn't necessarily need an ordinance, but I move that we direct staff to limit rental use of that building to either A, activities that have a historic nature, or B, activities that are of minimal impact. And I would translate that to mean meetings or things like that. That is a motion. Before there's a second, the thought process being that some of the rentals that are happening for parties and get-togethers or some of the other events that are being hosted out there, we get a lot of complaints that the building's not conducive to their event, and I think we have a lot of lack of appreciation for that building. So I just want to nix that building possibly being used inadvertently. So my motion is that we direct staff to limit rental use of the facility to events that are either A, of a historic nature, or B, have minimal impact to the facility.
I'll second that. Discussion to the motion. And Councilmember Lamb.
Well, I was going to discuss about the fees, but I guess we'll discuss this now.
I told you it's a short tangent.
Just quickly, I had a chance to go out and meet Tom last night, and I apologize, Kimberly, you were doing such a great job out there. I didn't get a chance to stop you and say thank you, but I got a chance to go out there and meet Tom and see what they do out there and what they were doing and what they do on twice a month. That's what that building is for. You know, when I see that building, I live down the street from it, and you know, I wonder sometimes what goes on in that building. But when I saw what was going on last night, it was a group of people that are doing something that they love, and they're not a rambunctious group. I don't see them causing any problems as far as it being dirty or destruction. And I look at it like whether, you know, just like it would be a park. If I'm a citizen of West Jordan and I want to use a park, I want to be able to go and use that park when I need to for that certain occasion. And so I want to thank Tom and Kimberly for the opportunity to come and see what you do and, you know, move forward. I do agree with Chris. I think that's a good thing, and all the discussion later on, you know, whether or not what the cost should be for this, but I agree with your motion there. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I have actually personally rented that hall on 2 different occasions, and each time was for family events. So this proposal that Councilman McConaughey just put forth would eliminate me and my family from going out there and using that. Now, I like to think that we were good stewards when we were there. And at the start of it, I go over a little with history with the families. So they know what it is, and talk to them about taking care of their children that are there. And I actually got my deposit back both times.
Good job.
So I think we need to let people know the importance of it and how to use it and care for it, and maybe add some additional guidelines. But I think bring it down to those 2 things. I think that's too tight of a scope. That would also eliminate ours from holding shows there that they have done in the past too.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I'm just not sure that we should be making the substitute motion, because I feel like if we're going to do something I think that's pretty major for our city. I feel that should be something that's agendized prior, so that if someone in the community wants to come and address us and give input, they should have that opportunity. So I'll vote against that substitute motion for that reason. I just feel like that's a major change from what has occurred, and we should give the public opportunity to give input. Also, I really would like to know what the true cost of using that building for a night is. I know it costs a lot to remodel, but what is our actual cost? Because I also am not, I'm not opposed to giving a price break, but I don't want the taxpayer subsidizing private use. So I think we need to know what the actual cost for the evening is.
Councilmember Jacob.
Our city manager
I can at least answer.
I'm sorry.
I can answer some of the, actual cost. At the present time, for resident fees, we request a damage deposit of $120. For morning use, which is between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., it's $150. For evening use, which is between 3:30 and 12 a.m., it's $200. And all-day use from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. is $350. There is an additional cost that you also have to have insurance on top of those amounts during that use time period. There's also now a different schedule for non-resident fees. That building is being used obviously for weddings, and depending on the nature of whether or not the person is getting married, if they're going to use it all day or a morning wedding or an afternoon wedding. So that's one of the impacts that I am thinking about, how to define minimal impact. Could be impacted by the decision or definition, but I wanted to at least tell you what the current figures are that we're offering residents.
And I get that that's what we're charging, but what we're charging and what our actual costs are not always the same thing. So that's really what I'd like to ascertain. What is our actual cost to have people in that building?
State law does not allow us to make a profit. So I'm assuming these previous numbers having been set by determining what time it takes to clean up, the time it takes to schedule it and maintain that schedule. So that number will verify that. Now that you've asked this, and it sounds like there's a resolution coming, we'll verify that. But we can't, as a city, generally make profits.
Seems awfully high that it costs us that much for a couple hours.
Okay, we'll verify that too.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some thoughts on the fees and the agenda item before us, but regards to the motion, I'm seeing a historic West Jordan building. Stop me if this sounds familiar. A historic West Jordan building that may or may not be safe, that's used by the arts community from time to time. Sound familiar yet? That we want to start limiting the use of, and I'm just having flashbacks to about 6 years ago, when, we had another building that kind of went down those roads and ended up not existing anymore. And I'm not sure that I want to take those steps, at least not until we have a broader discussion like Councilmember Whitelock mentioned. I think it's an important topic to flesh out a little bit better before we take a step. I know this isn't that step, but before we take a step in that direction, I'd rather see that discussion fleshed out a little bit better. So I'll be opposed to this motion. When the discussion to the fees comes back around, I have some thoughts on that, but one motion at a time.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't know if Parks or anyway, and also to Councilmember McConaughey, when we're talking low impact, kind of going to what Mr. Bricky was saying, is low impact a wedding reception? Or I have a couple comments, so I don't know if we want to go back and forth or.
I would, sorry.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I would defer to staff on that because much of that is, the facility use policy in my mind is very much an administrative document. Items that are administrative we typically leave to staff, but if it's something that the body of the council feels is important enough to give direction, then it can become a political issue. So I want to still leave as much leeway for staff to make the decision, well, this particular event, it's a family gathering that's relatively small. Yes, it should be allowed to proceed. That seems like minimal impact. Or if it's a family gathering with 700 of our closest friends, that's probably not something that would be minimal impact. So I don't want to set something so tight that we're preventing staff from doing their job. And if we can pretend the mayor's not here in that seat for a second, you'll very quickly see in your conversations with staff that they care more about that building and the facilities than anybody else in the city, anybody on the council, anybody who's used it. Those buildings, especially that particular building, is tied very, very closely to those who have had stewardship over it. And they genuinely want to see what's in the best interest of the building and of history and for the city. So I want to give them as much leeway as possible, but also where they pointed out that we've had issues and problems in the past and irreparable harm and damage, let's put the reins on that And then if there's something that we can do to open it up a little bit more down the road, fantastic. But that building's kind of priceless, and I don't want to risk it. So that's why I want to leave a little bit of interpretation for staff to determine administratively what that is. But I still want to make sure we have protection.
Following Councilmember Anderson's comments, we'll vote.
Okay.
On the motion on the table.
Thank you, Mayor. So for parks, is the building is registered with the, it's a historic building? I mean, it's registered like with the state or something?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Has the city applied for any kind of grants that may, there's like museum grants that I'm aware of. Do we have grants that help support the building?
I'm not aware of any grants that we've applied for in the past.
Okay.
We could look into it if you'd wish.
Okay, and then before we vote, can we just restate the motion so we know what we're voting on? Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey moved to direct staff to create a policy to limit the rental use of that building, but I'll put it in the Pioneer Hall, to events that are of historical nature or minimal impact to the facility, was seconded by Mayor Riding. Okay? Vote? Okay.
Vote.
Mayor Riding.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
No.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Councilmember Burton.
No.
Councilmember Jacob.
No.
The vote passes 4-3.
No, that doesn't resolve still their final question, does it? Okay, we will move on to business item 9B, right?
No, we're still on that one because we took a little bit of a tangent to discuss other uses. We didn't discuss the specific item that would allow them to spend the next 2 years at that rate on those 2 days.
So do we still need to resolve Resolution 1804? Okay. Then I have Paul Dodd.
Just a comment for the legal aspect of it. I do think with Councilmember Burton stating he's rented that facility before and had to pay for it, we as a city would have to treat all applicants the same when they apply for doing that or for having the building or for a fee being reduced. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind. Normally, it's my understanding that the city, when they reduce fees, it's normally for organizations that are nonprofit or they have some type of activity that's benefiting the city or something along those lines. So we would need to consider each one of those and try to treat every applicant the same. I think that should be considered in the vote.
Councilmember Lamb.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a few weeks ago we gave permission to another organization to use that facility at no cost. Is that correct?
Probably. Which one was it?
I can't remember. It was an older gentleman and
To use Pioneer Hall?
to use Pioneer Hall.
I can do a quick search. Let me look real quick.
Ashley would know the answer.
Do you have that answer, Ashley? Can you?
It was for a group called Friends of the Battalion that wanted to come in, and we actually removed the item from the agenda.
Okay, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to Mr. Dodd's comment, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, I wasn't sure about the format of this because they're asking for reduced fees and not fully waived fees. Historically, they've helped out, regularly on the 4th of July events. So I'm seeing this as service in lieu of fees, more than just a reduction of fees for no reason whatsoever. They're providing the service to the city, A, and B, it's a historical nature that could arguably be tied to, well, we could argue that and have argued that for a bit. So my question would be, is this the appropriate route to go with this, or should it be the service in lieu of fees, and instead of just doing reduced, they apply for full waiver?
I think, obviously, as long as the council considers the different applicants and can state a basis for the reason of reducing or waiving the fees, that would be appropriate. I just think that it needs to be considered that they put on the record and state a reason why those for each person. And that way, everyone could be, treated in a similar situation. Anyone who's in a similar situation could be treated the same.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick question for staff. It'll probably be for Ashley. It might be for Dave. This group has been renting the hall for $30 a night for some time. Is that correct?
I'll turn that one over to Ashley. She's been dealing with this issue, so.
I had a feeling.
With the documentation I have, they have been renting it since 2012 with this dollar amount of $30.
Okay, and in 2012, was the city the owner of the building?
Yes, I believe
And
so.
So the city and the group had an agreement starting in 2012 to rent the building at $30 a night? To my knowledge, myself and Joel Linares went through all paperwork and the agreement when the building was turned over from DUP to the city of West Jordan, that there's nothing that states Old Glory Vintage Dancers in that agreement. Okay, so it's maybe a handshake or a wink-wink or something, but that's been the practice in
Correct.
any case. We don't
And
have
it's
it in
not
writing.
current to code right now, and that's why we brought it to city council, so that we can be in compliance with code.
Got it, okay. Thank you. With that in mind, I don't like changing, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. There's a phrase, and it's escaping me right now, as it often does. I don't like changing the game on somebody in kind of the middle of their game. They've been doing this for this price for a long time, renting it from the city for this price, and I don't see why all of a sudden we should have a problem with it. Why now? Why should we have a problem with it now? Why didn't we have a problem with it last year? So I am in favor of keeping this the way it is at the time being. Maybe we need to put it in writing. Maybe we need to put an expiration date on it and say, okay, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 12 months, we need to come back and revisit this and maybe make a new application, and maybe we'll raise it at that point. Maybe it'll be something between 30 and what the regular price is. Maybe it won't. But for right now, I just don't like changing the rules of the game on somebody in the middle of their game. So, my 2 cents. I don't believe there's a motion on the table right now.
There's not. Was that are you making
No, I'm not
motion?
making a motion. I'm just stating my opinion.
Councilmember Lamb.
Just a quick comment. Since Tom is here in the gallery and has spoken to me before, would it be worth it to give him a few minutes to kind of explain the history to us on the stand?
The mayor wants to allow him 3 minutes. There could be an objection from the council, but there's no objection. Then it's up to
Tom, would you like to take 3 minutes and talk to us?
I'm Tom Grant. I'm husband of Kimberly Grant, who's with Old Glory Vintage Dancers. And in the time we've had a chance to sit in your council, we probably could have taught you about 8 or 10 dances. It would have been a lot more fun than everything you've been through so far. So,
please.
When we appreciate your consideration of what we're asking for. When we came to Utah about 11 years ago, well, we wanted to be able to bring the traditions and history of the different things we've done in the past as we live back east. There wasn't any historical dancing occurring here in Utah of the nature of which we're talking about, and that's the late 1700s through the early 1900s, with primarily being in the 1800s proper. Pioneer Hall represents a unique opportunity for us. This building was built at the time the dances we teach were occurring. They were the kind of dances they would have been teaching in that building at that time. Over the period of years that have intervened since then, a lot of the historical content and the importance of it has been lost to modern dance, and quote-unquote square dancing is modern dance compared to the stuff that we teach. And so a lot of the dancing history has been lost because it wasn't here at the time. We have been able to bring it back here, and the people love it. They love to be able to come and learn these old dances, to be able to learn the history and the etiquette behind it, and just being able to do that in a place of history like Pioneer Hall is just thrilling to us to be able to do. Sure, this dance could be taught anywhere else, but it wouldn't be Pioneer Hall. The purpose of Pioneer Hall and its restoration is to keep the history alive, and we are part of the history we're trying to keep alive. So we really appreciate your consideration on that, where we try to keep the costs down so that those who attend don't have to pay a lot and we can appeal to a larger number of people. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Councilmember Anderson, you're up.
Yeah, my question isn't for you, so I don't have a question for you.
Right.
I have a question mainly for staff or our city manager or attorney. Is this what we're approving in 1802? If I remember correctly, it's a 2-year. It's a 2-year. And I agree. I don't want to change the rules in the middle of something that's been going on. However, I also don't, and we talked on the phone about this, that I don't think it's equitable to just keep it at $30 the whole time. That there ought to be some sort of an increase each year or every time the contract's renewed or something like that, just so that we're equitable on both fronts. So that's really all that was my thought. Is I don't know that I'm comfortable leaving it at 30. I don't know what that increase should be, 33, 35, 40, I don't know. But I don't want to change the rules in the middle of the game. That's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, in my neighborhood, there was an area where the neighbors complained about people driving too fast on the street. So they contacted the city. The city came in and put a couple of stop signs up. And my son got really mad. He said, that stop sign hasn't been there for years and years. Now there's a stop sign there. It's a stupid place for a stop sign. It doesn't need anything. All it's doing is slowing traffic down, and that's not the right reason to put a stop sign there. So he showed me that he's not going to stop that stop sign, so he could keep driving right through it, and he kept doing that. Well, one day he got caught driving through there, and he got a ticket for it. And he told the officer, well, you give me a ticket. I've driven all these other times and never got a ticket. And the officer said, well, I guess I wasn't here those other times when you did it, so he got a ticket for it. Consequently, those stop signs have been removed because they really weren't needed in that location, and he still drives through there without having to stop, so he's happy about that. That's one note. My second note is, since this is a for-profit organization, I'm an electrical contractor, I'm a for-profit organization as well. And I used to buy my wire for a really good price, and then all of a sudden there was these great big storms down in Texas that made wire prices go up and made my PVC prices go up. And I've been buying it for the lower price all this time and now have to do it at a higher price. And then these poor people who I'm doing the work for, they didn't have the money to afford the new prices. I have to raise my prices in order to pass that on. And so I did, and that's just part of this. And $30 is really nothing. I mean, when I rented it, I had to pay for the insurance. I had to pay $200, and that was over $300 plus the deposit. I did get my deposit back, which is another $120 because, and I like what you're doing there, and I think it'd be great to have you continue to do that. I think $30 is a steal. That's less than free. We're subsidizing at $30. That's true. You're doing some services in addition, which are fantastic. But I think the residents in West Jordan are paying for you to do that, and I don't know if those services reach that level or not. So I would be opposed to going another 2 years on that. But I do think it'd be a good idea for us to create some kind of a fee structure for multiple users, because they learned how to do it and they can do some things and work that out. So I'm opposed to what this is here now, but I would like to see you get with Ashley and whoever else with the city and work something else out, because we don't have anything other than yes and no. So at this point, I will be voting no.
Councilmember Whitelock.
And I guess I'm kind of where Councilmember Burton is. I feel like the city right now is subsidizing your group, because if City Manager Bricky is telling me that it's the fee that it is, and then I take the rental time that they charge, and then I take the hours that you're doing, it's more than $30 for the night that the city's paying. So I also don't think we should just rip it out from you. So I would want to have some motion to give it to you, not for the 2 years, but maybe for like 6 more months, and then have a new agreement or something, because I really can't vote to just say yes at 2 years of the taxpayers subsidizing an organization. I too think it's great. I looked up your website to see what you were when this showed up. I was like, well, who are these people and what do they do? I think it's a great thing you're doing. Continuing history is important, but not, we just can't subsidize private with tax dollars. It's not right. So I'd love to see an alternative motion, Chris.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Since I don't have a question for Dr. Grant, unless there's anything else for him, I would suggest we allow him to return to his seat.
Please, yes, you can sit down.
Thank you.
I understand the subsidy concern. It spreads across pretty much everything that we do. When it comes to developers coming in and saying, here's what I want to build, the fees that we gather from those developers don't cover the cost of staff time. With youth soccer, this is another interesting one. You have a for-profit organization that has priority rights over our fields. Last I checked, our soccer fields bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of $70,000 in fees. However, it's costing us over $500,000 a year to maintain the soccer fields. That's just the soccer complex. There's a significant subsidy there. I could give you quite a significant list with other youth athletics, with the Pony League, Cal Ripken, with the Sheriff's Posse when they come out to use the rodeo arena. But that's why oftentimes when it comes back to the council and we're looking at service in lieu of fees, we're also looking at the event saying, does this provide an overall benefit to the city? And I believe that this adds a historical element, and I think it's good for the culture of the city. That said, I'd like to try a compromise rather than, and I might have a hard time getting this out right, and it might make a little bit of a mess because I often trip over my words as I stall to try and figure out how to articulate it. But how would the council feel about allowing them to use Pioneer Hall once a month instead of twice, and then once a month using the community room here at City Hall with no charge for use of the community room here? Kind of a compromise. At least once a month they're out of Pioneer Hall, which is historically relevant to what they're doing, but then they're still having that second opportunity and they're here at City Hall in another room, but this time no charge for that. So that would be my motion, to approve resolution 18-04, allowing them their choice of either the second or fourth Tuesday of each month for 2018 and 2019 at Pioneer Hall, and the alternating Tuesday in the community room for no charge. That is my motion.
Councilmember Lamb.
I'll second for discussion.
So we have a motion on the table from Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Lamb. Councilmember Burton.
I'm not trying to kick him out of Pioneer Hall and make him go over to the community room. Oh, the community room is nice. I've actually rented that too and paid more than $30 when I rented it too for my son's birthday party. It was great, by the way. We did some things that we couldn't do in Pioneer Hall because of it. So I'm going to be going against it. I'd still like to work something out. I think we could work something better. But more than $30. I don't know if I have the answer, the number right now, but I'm opposed.
Councilmember Lamb.
Chris, I agree with the way you're going with this. My only concern, seen from their side, is I'm not sure if they want to have that second night here at City Hall because of the theme of what it is, where they want to be at Pioneer Hall for this dance. So that's my only concern. Go ahead.
Councilmember Anderson.
I'll defer to Councilmember McConaughey and come back.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you. Two things I was going to point out. One, nonprofit is not the same as not-for-profit. I can assure you they're not making a killing on what they're bringing in. The purpose for charging is so that they can cover the cost of the facility usage. I'm sure if we put a condition on it that says you cannot charge, I don't think that's going to really impact them. The other thought is, Councilmember Lamb, if you're not sure of the motion that I threw out, you do have the ability to offer an alternative motion. And if you want to move to just approve Resolution 1804, you could do that if you have.
So after Councilmember Whitelock's comments, we will take a vote on the motion on the table.
I actually wanted to produce a substitute motion to reduce this contract. And I'm with Councilmember Lamb. If we're going to let them do it, I think where they want to do it is in Pioneer Hall. But my substitute motion will be that we grant this for 6 months, and during that time we have staff reassess and we reassess. I'd like to know how many organizations are we subsidizing, and who they are and what we're subsidizing, because I look at the soccer complex as more than just a soccer field. It's also a park. It's a green space. So in my mind, that's a little different than tonight's scenario. So my substitute motion is to grant what is being asked for 6 months, and in that time, get more information and then readdress it.
Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you. And I actually was going to go down kind of a different...
Okay. I was wondering if he was going to second that.
Oh, no.
So now we have a motion on the table in a second by Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you.
So now Councilmember Anderson, discussion of the motion.
No, that's great. And just sitting here listening to my colleagues discuss different options, I mean, I think everybody's point is well taken. And I wanted to see if Councilmember Whitelock might consider a year at $40 a night. And I don't know if that's, you know, I've talked a little bit about increasing it, and go for a year, not 2 years, and just kind of see if this is a middle ground that the council will be amenable to. And then as the staff prepares the original thing we talked about prior to this one, the original motion that Councilmember McConaughey made, that we can readdress this in a year, but charge a little bit more and let them still use Pioneer Hall, because I think that's so anyway, that's my thought for the author of the motion, substitute motion on the table.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I'm certainly not a mathematician, but when I look at the fee, I'm looking at $23 and a few cents per hour is what we're charging when they take it from the 3:30 to midnight. So 40 seems a little low, because yeah, it is more than 30, but and for a year, I can't. That's not enough for a whole year.
Okay, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be speaking against the motion primarily because 6 months is really not, in council terms, that's really not much time at all. That's coming up in, well, 11 council meetings from now, and that will put us right at the peak of budgeting. That is really, really soon. I would suggest we go 1 year with where it's at, or 2 years at the $40. But even that, the fee is coming from the folks who are. I'm not even sure about the $40. I'd prefer to stick with where we're at. So I'll be against the. I'll be against this motion.
Let's vote.
Councilmember Jacob, yes?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
No.
Councilmember Burton?
No.
Councilmember Anderson?
No.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
No.
Mayor Whiting?
No.
Vote fails 2-5.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 1804, reducing the fees for 2018 as requested. Only 2018.
I would second, with the clarification that this is an alternative motion. Since the original alternative motion failed, we went back to my original motion. So this would be an alternative motion to approve Resolution 1804, but just for the year 2018. So I would second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Go
I
ahead.
need to have the motion clarified, unfortunately, because I'm being advised if your original motion included use of this building's community center, community room on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So my original motion right now is somewhat irrelevant because there's been a substitute motion offered. And the substitute motion was just approve it as it is, but for 1 year instead of 2. So if that were to fail, then we'll go back to my motion and clean that one up.
So did we, you made the motion, who seconded it? You? I made it. Okay. Okay, let's vote on that motion.
I just want to make clear, we have, the building, this building is not available Tuesday and Thursday nights.
But the motion on the table right now is to just waive the fees, or reduce the fees, excuse me, for Pioneer Hall for 2018. It's not to use.
For both days, no City Hall.
Right. Okay. Let's see, let's go up here. Councilmember Whitelock.
No.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Mayor Whiting.
No.
Councilmember Burton.
No.
The vote passes 4-3.
Now can we move on to business item 9B?
Mayor, can I move for a 5-minute recess?
So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, let's break 5 minutes.
So they either pulled it out of here when they moved it really hard, or it is disconnected in here. I think it's disconnected. It's this one right here. No. Here. Yeah, I do. Here.
So plug it back in there?
This is other duties.
Can you wiggle it a little bit to get it?
Pull it towards you a little bit. You okay?
Yeah, no, I thought I pushed you. Did you plug it?
Yeah, it's still not working.
Oh.
That's okay, I didn't have anything to say.
I'm worried that when they unplugged it, it's running in. Oh, God, no, this is the problem. They rolled over it.
Could be the problem.
That's the problem. It got moved last week at the swearing in. I'll guarantee you that's probably part of the problem. Or they might have yanked it out of there, and that is so loose anyway. So we're going to
Sometimes look at that.
And you can adjust it till you get it to where you need it.
Okay, you might want to go over there.
See if we can hear it.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Yeah. Yeah, you could. Volume button on the side. And it doesn't stop or start. It just keeps going, so you just have to kind of get it.
I'm ready to get moving. It was 7.
5 minutes, for real. 5 votes is like that.
Okay, business item 9B, discussion and possible action regarding resolution 18-06, confirming the appointment of members of the Employee Discharge Appeal Board, January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2019. So 2-year time period. Staff, who's this?
So moved.
Okay, time out. No, so moved. So we need to have David state who his department head appointments are, and then the council needs to choose one person for the board and an alternate for the board. And keep in mind, they're more than likely, we will be using it during the daytime this coming year. Okay?
My recommendation for the two department heads, one of us has previously served on the same board, that is Bill Piper. I'd like to reappoint Bill to continue serving this next term, as well as the new addition would be Scott Langford. They're smiling, and I appreciate their willingness to volunteer this assignment.
Having been in the military, I know how volunteerism works. So, and we also have 2 staff members that are already on there that need to be approved. And now we need 2 Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to put in my pitch, because I served on this board over the last year and was able to sit in on one hearing. And it's very entertaining. If you have any interest in, if you ever wanted to be a lawyer or a judge or anything like that, it's a nice warm-up. So
are you volunteering for another session?
No, I'm not. I'm going to allow somebody else to have a turn. However, I think it's a really great opportunity, especially if we have pending cases that we know are coming, because oftentimes you get nominated for this and you never use it. So I highly recommend it. It's fun.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I would nominate Councilmember Burton as the council member. I don't have a nomination for alternate, however.
How about Councilman McConaughey for the alternate?
Councilmember McConaughey, you're showing up on here.
I'm really hesitant.
You're the most difficult one. That we
To
schedule, am I
schedule,
right?
I'm not sure. Most
No, I mean
difficult,
scheduling.
that can be factually proven. I would hold off for anybody else first, and as a last resort, I would.
Now, this person that we're talking about would be an alternate, not, it's not the primary. So Councilmember Burton, you're okay with being the primary? So do we have Councilmember McConaughey?
Councilmember Lamb or Whitelock, would either of you have interest in serving as alternate before I accept Councilmember Burton?
I don't have a full interest, but if you don't want to, I would serve as an alternate.
Knowing that this would likely be during the day and potential that you have to take time off work.
How long does a hearing last?
The one we had in November was 1 full day. The one we had a couple years ago, we probably spent 23 hours on several different days. So Paul probably can give more information.
The one that's likely coming will likely be 3 to 5 days.
But this would, again, you've been offered.
Yeah.
Now, a question for you, Paul. If the primary can be there for half of that time and then the alternate, the other half, does that not work?
That would not work.
Okay.
Think of it, the role you are playing is that of almost like a judiciary. Once you start hearing the case, you wouldn't want to transfer in the middle of a trial to a new judge. So you start with the panel and you finish with that panel.
Okay. Councilmember Jacob?
Yeah, just in the interest of full disclosure, the hearing that we had that was just one day, the hearing was one day. There was 2 or 3 or 4 prep sessions that were a couple hours in the afternoon on other days, and a session after the hearing to solidify the verdict, as it were. So even the one-day hearings are a few days worth of commitment.
Did they provide lunch?
Yes, and Melanie usually buys lunch, so if you like, box lunches from wherever it is, that's always good.
Councilmember Whitelock.
While I wouldn't want to be the main person, I could be the alternate, yes.
Okay.
So, Mayor, that being said, I move to approve Resolution 18-06 with Councilmember Burton as the primary council member, Councilmember Whitelock as the alternate, with Mr. Piper and Mr. Langford filling in the blanks, and then the other 2 were Clint Hutchings and Ty Nielsen. And these are all to serve for the 2-year term, correct?
Yes.
That would be my motion.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Business item 9C, discussion and possible action regarding adding a work session beginning at 5:30 p.m. and moving the beginning of the council meeting to a later time. Councilmember Whitelock.
Do you want me to put you on?
I'm going to read this because I do better that way. Work session, study session, planning session, no matter the name, it is a valuable tool that many other elected bodies use to get work done. As I started watching our city business more closely, I came away with a few thoughts. One was our budget process needs to be changed. A work meeting is the perfect venue to work on this. We as an elected body can set the vision, then task staff to have each department bring their budget proposal before us to show how it helps with the vision for the city. Together, we can work on what will be the best use of taxpayer dollar. Then, when it is time to vote on the budget, we can feel confident that we have discharged our fiduciary responsibility with fidelity. The next thing I noticed was that often staff were unable to produce what council members asked for, which is understandable when they have no notice and they're not in their offices. Sometimes I felt the council was rushing through the agenda to get it done in a timely manner. Remember, these are my perspectives as a citizen sitting in the audience. Although what I originally envisioned was not what I was going to propose tonight, in light of my conversations with fellow council members ranging from no way, yes, to I can't do that time, and let's discuss this at a strategic planning session. I am still going to express my full vision on the how and why. First off, these are public meetings with agendas. The difference is there's not public comment, as votes are not being taken. They are also a little more conversational than business format. Unless one person is dominating, the chair, who at this point is the mayor, just participates and keeps the time in check. If needed, the chair can call on people to speak to ensure everyone has a chance to participate. This conversation format allows more open dialogue between staff and elected officials. I understand that we can and do reach out to staff for clarifying information, usually individually. And we still could do this, but this allows the full council to hear that dialogue in a public meeting. 2 nights in a month to make decisions that affect over 110,000 people just is not enough time, in my opinion. I feel like we should start by adding an additional Wednesday to work on continuing strategic planning, budgeting, and general work. My thought was we add 1 or 2 Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30 or 8. And we would discuss what would be coming up the next meeting, if needed, allowing council to ask staff questions and have time for staff to bring back information before a vote was cast. We would also have budgeting be an ongoing topic. As you know, the budget, although voted on, is a somewhat fluid document. Wouldn't it be nice to know before the public is angry that we have a need, or to have a department head share with us that they actually won't be using the total amount allotted for something, hence it could probably be reallocated to a pressing need? Thank you for listening. At this time, I withdraw my motion for lack of support.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I realize Councilmember Whitelock said she's withdrawing the item. However, since it's already on there and we've already had some discussion, I'd like to share my thoughts on that too, with your approval, Mayor.
Let's pass on that. She's withdrawn unless you want to bring it up for a strategic plan meeting to talk about.
I don't think it's fair that one person be allowed to speak on something, but the others not.
What if she withdrew it?
After extended comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
You can talk.
I'll be quick. She does bring up some good points. I wanted to point out that we do have workshops on a regular basis, just not calendared consistently. When it comes to the budget, in years past we've had as many as 6 or 7 workshops. Last year I think we only had about 3 workshops. So we do have plenty of the, well, I won't say plenty because that makes it sound like it's sufficient, but that is something that we have done in the past. In conversations that I had with Councilmember Whitelock, she brought up the idea of wanting to know with a little bit more notice what's going to be on a future agenda. I thought she made some really, really good points in our conversation, and I would like to, going off the conversation we had, I would like to see us at a minimum add an agenda item to the end of each agenda for discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items. That, I think, should become the place where we all say, these are the things that we want to discuss in the future on a future meeting, or staff can say, these are the items that are coming to you, and what sort of information would you like to see from us? I think that would be a good starting point for a better preparation from us and from staff. I think there is a lot of good and a lot of merit behind what Councilmember Whitelock shared, and despite the withdrawal, I'd like to see us push with at least that one item, updating the agenda to include a standing item at the end. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Business item 9D, discussion and possible action regarding plans for the annual City Council strategic planning meeting to determine the date and agenda items. Councilmember Burton.
I would like to reflect what I brought up in an earlier council meeting, having 2 different dates, at least a week apart, where we can discuss in one, give staff time to come back and provide us information to make decisions in the second one. And my preference is Fridays, but I am open to other days. And if we did Fridays, I would be open to doing it on Friday the 26th and Groundhog Day.
February 2nd.
Is it January 26th?
February 2nd.
Councilmember Lamb.
I am in agreement with January 26th. I think Friday's a great day for all of us to do that, and we can all, those of us that do work, can find time to get off work. I'm not sure, though, if we need the 2 days. I haven't been in this before. Dirk, you have. Chris, you have. So I'll rely on those that have been in the strategic planning needs before, whether or not 2 days are needed. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree mostly with Councilmember Burton on either January 26th or February 22nd. The difference of opinion is, yeah, listen to what I mean, not what I say. The only disagreement I have with Councilmember Burton was the use of the word "and." I would prefer the word "or." Just one of those days, not both. I could do either.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I could do the 26th, but I will most likely be out of state on the 2nd.
We'll do it in Vegas.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Having gone through 2-day planning sessions and 1-day planning sessions, I think if it's done effectively, 1 day is sufficient. I think last year, though, I think holding it to 1 day, we did miss a few things that we probably should have thrown in. We talked mainly budget priorities, and that was pretty much it for that day. I would have liked to have also seen committee assignments discussed, and maybe a few of the other ideas that, like, for example, council schedules and some of the other things that just merit good discussions. So I think one day can be enough. I don't know if we need an option for a second day, a player option, pick up the contract or not. I think January 26th is a great day, by the way. I think it's fine. But yeah, I'm in favor of starting with one day, and then if we still have items to pick up, let's pick them up after that. But let's start with the 26th and go from there.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I've only participated in one day, and at least on the city council, we did this when I worked at the Chamber of Commerce. We did a strategic plan that was in one day. It depends on the number of topics on the agenda, how much time we spend on it, how deep we go. I'm okay if we have to have a second day or a half day, but I kind of like to play that at the end of the 26th. The 26th works fine for me, but maybe there's just an item on the agenda that if we don't get through everything that we've decided to put on it, if we end up with 8 or 9 items, which limits you to an hour, only 45 minutes apiece, you may not have enough time to get through them all, and there may be an alternative. So I'd rather use the 26th and maybe another date, depending on what we address, and I could make that work in my schedule. The second probably doesn't work. It sounds like for a few people, but maybe we just start on the 26th and see how many topics we have. I think 5 or 6 topics to discuss is probably ample for a 8-hour day. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So the 26th sounds really good. What I would like to do then is reserve a second date, and if we don't use it, that would be great, so that I don't schedule anything on that day, and perhaps you're in the same boat, and we have that open, because there were some things that I wanted to do last one and didn't ever get there. So since the second does not look good, I would like to reserve the 9th for a follow-up, and then at the end of the 26th, if we don't need it, we can cancel the 9th. So I would propose the 9th.
Councilmember Anderson.
I would be available on the 9th for just a couple hours. I will be leaving for the weekend.
Well, hopefully, a couple hours is in the morning, I take it? Okay. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I will agree with Councilmember Burton because I wholeheartedly believe we can wrap up in one day. Having an extra day as a backup, fantastic, but I really don't think we'll need it. So I'm happy going that route. Planning on the 26th, backup for the 9th.
Okay, it is cast. We will do it on the 26th.
Can I ask? Go ahead.
I will ask our city clerk if she would talk. Now, how do you feel about the Water Conservancy District has offered their room over there for us to use. If it's for free, it's free to us. If you're okay with that, I'll ask her to call them and see if it's available that day. If it's not available that day,
Just here?
we'll probably have to be here.
The community room?
Community room. McConaughey, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. My preference would be here anyway. We've got access to staff if there are questions, if there's anything quick. Plus, I'm pretty sure there's folks in the public who are going to want to attend, and this just seems a little bit more conventional. So I would prefer that we have it here rather than somewhere else. That's just me, though. I'm just one of 7.
Thank you for your preference. I think I would still like to try to do it over there, and yeah, staff can. It's close. It's not even maybe what is it, a mile away. It's close. They can. It's not Midway. Remember when they did one in Midway? She remembers that.
We used to always do them like for 2 nights and do them overnight away, but it was a lot of money. We spent
The Water
a lot of
Conservancy District is really fairly close. It's good. Then the other thing I want to ask everyone is for council members, would you please email any issues to Melanie that you would like to see on the agenda? Let her try to put some organization to those, and I'm sure there will be duplication, so just get them to her, let her get it on the agenda, and let's see if we can work through those. Everybody okay with that?
Email, so we email first or put it on the list?
Whichever.
Yes, please email.
May I request that you just carbon copy, I know that's an old phrase, but to my offices, or thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I would like, and kind of, why do we want to do it off-site? I guess I agree with Chris. I just, what's the reasoning for off-site?
To be off-site.
Because you're here every day?
Yeah, that's right. That's a good, I mean, we did it at Mountain America Credit Union for how many, 2-3 years, and it was just kind of nice. It very seldom in the last probably 15 years has been here. And it's always been just kind of nice just to get out of the building for the day.
I guess I don't really care. It just makes sense to be here where staff is the reason that I think it makes sense here. But I can drive to the Conservancy District. Chad likes people on 1300 West.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. On the agenda, we noted that we're going to discuss possible agenda items. I've been keeping track from the prior council, things that we had specifically said, let's wait till strategic planning. I've got the list all set, ready to go. If you'd like, I can share it, and then we can just forward that list over to City Clerk, if that's okay. I hadn't plugged in yet. So these are items that the council has discussed, saying we need to talk about this. And then, of course, there's a couple things that I wanted to see. These are put in what my mind would be the order of importance. Do this first, and then if we don't miss some, or if we miss some of them, items we can handle in a council meeting. Number one, the biggest thing is change to the form of government and making sure we've defined a game plan to update code. Make sure our priorities are in such a way that legal knows what their first priority is and where it should be, and how do we get there, what milestones are on the way. Number two, we've talked a lot about the general plan and the need to reinvigorate the general plan committee and have them review the future land use map. This has been a big item of concern for a couple of years. We've also talked about wanting to work regularly with the Planning Commission, so that's why this is here. Legislative engagement. We talked about timing because last year we didn't meet with our legislative delegation until the session opened. We've had conversations, I think, with all the prior council members about wanting to have something right after the session so we can have a wrap-up and start putting together a game plan for the next year. Meet in July just as a council to make sure we're on the same page. August with the delegation and the lobbyists to say, here's what we want. October, November to finalize game plan. So I'd like to discuss that one. Parks and open space, talking about the soccer fields. We have those for a limited time. There's a contract that says it needs to be returned to unplowed field. One of our legislative priorities has been working to try and obtain those from Salt Lake City, who owns the airport and the fields around it. As we're working to do that, if for some reason that doesn't work, we'd also been talking about expanding and opening up other fields for athletic use. We also want to talk about regional funding to try and get regional dollars to help our regional park at Ron Wood. We've talked repeatedly about updates to council rules and procedures, and this would be a good place to have some of that conversation. Specifically, what do we want to do about the AV recording or streaming broadcasting policy? Also, some of us have talked about the process for the public hearings. There's a difference between how it's done for the Planning Commission versus City Council. So conversations about that. Transportation is something everybody has heard about during campaigning, and this is something that the prior council told our legislators and our lobbyists that this is our biggest priority. Get funding so we can fix transportation. I think it would be beneficial for all of us to know what the transportation master plan is, what are the current priorities, what funding do we have coming in from where, and do we want to change any of those around. This is one I think we might want to have staff present for. We've talked about rates, specifically the enterprise funds on the utility bill. Do we want to set a target fund balance? It seems like there's been confusion as to what's the policy. How much cash do we want to have? How much do we need? Where should the rates go? Should we have a multi-year rate plan? That's something we've said, let's talk about that as strategic plan. And then the other thing that we need to talk about is appointments and assignments for various committees. So this is the list that I had, and I thought this might be a decent place to start for the outline for strategic plan. I think I've captured everything I've heard from everybody over the last few months, but we do have new folks. So, Mayor, if you're okay, it was suggested we don't want to have too many items. Maybe I send this to Melanie as a starting point, and then we add to that if necessary, or we can maybe have a little bit further conversation, but based on the hour, I'll defer to you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I think there was also some discussion on, and I don't know if just like economic development, city aesthetics. There was a third one that I can't remember. And again, I don't want this list to go big, too big.
Can I just interrupt you? Because this is what I wanted you to do, and I wanted to try to just get everything to Melanie. I mean, it's a good start. So all these things that we're talking about, economic development and aesthetics and those kinds of things, we really want to have them on there. And if we can go through and talk about them quickly that day, to where we're not going into the second day. If we go into the second day, we will. But if we don't need to, but I would encourage everybody, all of these things that we're talking about, sure, let's get them on the agenda.
Okay.
And let's get them to Melanie. Okay, with that in mind, I would hope that we can now move on to the last item on our agenda tonight. And this is business item 9E, an overview and discussion of the current council rules, policies, and procedures. Councilmember McConaughey. And I know you're going to do this in 15 minutes or less, right?
Seconds, 15 seconds.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, I can do it in 15 minutes or less as long as you give me a 10-minute head start before starting the timer. So, what I'm discussing tonight is really more of just a really quick high-level overview of our ethics policy and our city council rules and procedures. These are things that are beneficial to anybody on the council to know the first day that they come in. This can make your life miserable, make our working relationship miserable, or it can make it work very well and nice and smoothly. One of my favorite neighbors is a farmer, and his comment, his famous saying is, "Good fences make good neighbors." If we know where those fences are, what those boundaries are, we'll be able to work well amongst ourselves as council members and work well with the staff. So that's the reason for talking through these. Few disclaimers to start with. These are the rules as they exist today. There's been lots of talk about possibly changing some of these, but this is what's in there right now, and until there's an official change, this is what we have. I will acknowledge that myself included, on occasion for ignorance, we have not always adhered to all of the rules. That said, we need to strive to be better. You don't look back in time and say, well, so-and-so did this, and therefore that's the bar, it's just as low as it possibly can be. Rather, we look to what the ideal is, we look to the standard, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So the rules that are laid out, despite failings we've had in the past, we're going to look forward and try for that. Other thing, since the mayor wants me to keep it short, we're not going to cover every possible scenario or everything that I've seen over the last 6 years. We're just going to hit on some of the highlights. So, why do we review the rules? Just out of curiosity, how many of you have ever played a game of Monopoly that went over 6 hours? Okay, pretty much everyone. The reason for that is because you don't know the rules or the group didn't know the rules. Oftentimes people play Monopoly based on how they've seen other people play. So the reason we want to go through the rules is so that we can keep each other on track, and you'll notice the bottom, avoid going to jail. Games, when you don't know the rules like Monopoly, they last far longer than they should, as some of our council meetings have. This is a snapshot or a screenshot of the rules from the Hasbro website for Monopoly. When you land on a property, if you don't buy it, it goes out to auction. The banker can sell it off for $1 or whatever the lowest bid is. In a normal game, once each property has been landed on once, it should be gone. Most people don't play that way, and that's why it takes forever and ever. Knowing the rules, very, very helpful. Outcomes are different if you don't know the rules. And if you decide you don't like the rules, you're going to play by house rules, you should at least make that decision intelligently and know what exactly the rules are that you're suspending. So, where do we find our rules? There's the city website. Bottom left, you click on Mayor and City Council. Bottom left corner, council rules and policies, procedures, and then we have ethics for elected officials. So first up, let's talk about ethics, because this part is actually adopted by city code. There are a number of violations that exist out there, anything from missing 4 or more meetings in a year or 3 in a row, not giving the clerk your accurate contact information, all sorts of issues that are out there. The one thing I do want to point out is if somebody is charged of a crime, our ethics rules say the council will not comment on that until after a verdict is rendered from the court. We can get into discussion on why later with our attorney, but that's what's in the rules right now, or in the ordinance right now, not just the rules, but codified. Remedies for ethics violations. There's a potential fine for each meeting, criminal investigation, prosecution. I want to point out something with this one. When I first joined the council, we had David Church from the League of Cities and Towns come down and talk to us. He congratulated us on being elected to our position and said, "Congratulations, you are now part of the government the Bill of Rights was written to protect the people from." And he pointed out that as elected officials, there are laws that we have the ability to break and violate that the regular resident does not. There's a higher standard set for us. So, criminal investigation and prosecution is one of the possible outcomes of those ethics violations. We have an ethics commission review, there's possibility of censure, or even now removal from office by judicial proceedings. I don't anticipate we're going to have to worry about this, but I just wanted to point out that it's there. Let's jump to our rules and procedures. So, first up, representation for the city. If you're going to something on a city function, and here it specifically calls out the the National League of Cities or the Utah League of Cities of Towns, either the annual or their mid-year meeting, if you want to go to one of these events, it has to be agendized and come to the council for approval. Now, in this part of the council rules, it seems to be talking about travel and the expenditure associated with it, but it doesn't specifically say that. Down here, where it has section C, there's no mention made of any expenses. It just says, if you want to travel to a conference, a convention, or a seminar, city manager will prepare notice. It goes on the agenda. If the council is opposed to travel or if funds are not available, the trip won't happen. We should have followed that in the past on a couple of occasions. I'll save you the details now. Next up, representation on community task forces. Every appointment that we have requires that that appointee be designated by the city council. Think of it this way. You were elected by the residents to represent them here on the city council. When you go to another body, you are elected by the city council to represent the group of 7 of us. So you have to be appointed by us in order to represent us. Our rules say all appointments shall be brought before the council for consensus selection. Now, if there's a group out there that says, hey, we really want you to be out here and we want that designee to be the mayor, that's fine. If the council chooses chooses that they do not want the mayor to represent us on that board, then we go without representation. Every appointment representing us outside on these community boards, when you're officially representing the city, has to be supported by the city council. When you're on those committees, you need to share an update with the council. Let us know what's going on. The reason we have those is so that we can split up the work and give everybody, it's simply not possible, even with a full-time mayor, for the city to be represented in every board. So we need to be sharing those updates with each other. While you're out there, please make sure that that group is aware that you cannot make commitments on behalf of the city, either financial or policy-based. For example, if the Jordan River Commission says, we want to undertake a project and we'd like to split out the cost, West Jordan's share would be $15,000, you can say, great, fantastic, I'll go back and talk to the council and see what they say. You cannot make that financial commitment. And I'll make this quick disclaimer. Even the mayor can't do that. In our form of government, the mayor is one of the 7, the mayor is the chair, the council owns the budget. So from a policy perspective as well, if the Jordan River Commission were to say, we want this to be the policy, will West Jordan formally support us? You have to say, I will bring it back to the city council and get council approval. You cannot make commitments either financial or policy-wise on behalf of the city council. Now, when it comes to the news media, the mayor is the official spokesman for the city, and this is important, on the items the council has voted upon. On items that the council has not voted on or upon which we have not designated an official position, There is no official position from the city. Nobody is able to substitute their opinion for the voice of the council. And if the council has one opinion and the representative speaking to the media has a different opinion, it's irrelevant. You support what the council says and the decision made by the council, whether that's the mayor pro tem, or anybody else. But again, the mayor is designated as a spokesperson for the press. In the past, we've had questions about political releases coming or press statements coming from the city council. Our rules say that's not appropriate. Working on items outside of your district. It's important to note that while some of us were elected from a specific district, all of us have an equal voice here on the city council. One person is not more important than the other just because they happen to be at large, or a certain or the district where City Hall happens to be located, or anything like that. We all work together. We all have an equal vote. We're all going to be called upon by folks who are outside of our districts for things that impact them. If something's going on in District 4, for example, with the Ronwood Playground, the citizens in District 1 still have to help foot the bill. They still have a valid voice and representation. Point here is we all need to work with each other. I want to call out a perfect example. I know Councilmember Burton had some ideas and thoughts about what he wants to see here in Veterans Memorial Park. Recognizing that's in District 1, he didn't undertake to go that one solo. He reached out to me to chat with me about what we want to do there. As we thought about that, that one might even be questionable because even though it's in District 1, is a regional park something District 1 and 2 should be deciding? Or is that something the entire council has an interest in and should really be done with all of us? So the point here, our rules, nothing's hard and solid, but give a courtesy notification to the council member in whose district the issue relates as soon as possible. District council members, if you have something, give the at-large a heads up, and especially the mayor. The mayor is the one who's going to receive the bulk of the calls from the residents. Let him know what you're doing. And mayor and at-large, as you see things in individuals' districts, please reach out and work with them. Now, don't do this. Filing fees. You have the ability to sponsor legislation. If you're friends with a developer who wants to rezone a property, don't try and put a rezone on an agenda thinking, oh, this will save them the fees. Rules say don't do that. Probably not terribly applicable, but we should call that out. The other item, service of legal documents. You are not authorized to accept service of legal documents, meaning if somebody is suing the city or trying to sue you in your official capacity, they try and give you the documents, you are not authorized to accept them. Refer them to our attorney's office. They'll figure out if it needs to go to the attorney's office, to the city clerk. Don't touch it. You are not authorized to accept service of legal documents. While I'm at it, let's not sue each other either. Okay, I'll turn the mic back on. So, rules and proceeding. This is under the rules and procedures section of our code. Closed sessions. So this is coming from three places. Our city code very well consolidates the language in state code when it talks about open and closed meetings. Utah law requires that every meeting of a legislative body be open to the public unless lawfully closed. We have to have 2/3 vote. No ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment can be approved at a closed meeting. Oftentimes you'll hear the council say, we don't vote in a closed session. Well, we don't vote on those. We can vote to say, let's be done, let's go home, but we don't vote on any of those items there. The meeting has to be open to the public. So often there are noticing requirements that go along with that. When we go to state code for definition of what exactly is a meeting, it's a convening of the public body with a quorum present. That means if 4 of us are present, that's the first part, and the second part is discussing a matter over which the public body has jurisdiction or advisory power. So if 4 of us are together and we're talking about the solid waste or the neighborhood dumpster program, or if we're talking about the order in which we plow streets, or stormwater, or fees, or anything city related, that could be construed as a meeting, and that has to be properly noticed and open to the public. This section 5 down below, where they give definitions, electronic meetings count as meetings. They specifically call out that email or even text messaging can qualify as a meeting. So if I, as a council member, text 3 of you, so now there's 4 of us on there, saying, hey, what do you think about our budget for snow removal? That could be seen as a meeting, And if it's done in a forum that's not open to the public, it's not properly noticed, that would be could be viewed as a violation of the Open Meeting Act. Quick comment, Councilmember Jacob pointed this out to me the other day. Even on social media, Facebook, if there are 3 of us that are commenting on a thread and then a 4th comes in, that seems like you could potentially argue any other method that conveys a message or facilitates communication electronically. We need to be very careful of making sure we don't have policy discussions or discussions about things happening or over which we have jurisdiction where there's 4 of us outside of a public meeting. There are a few reasons we can have the closed session. They are limited. There are a few that we have as kind of a standard catch-all on our agenda, whether it's personnel, union bargaining, litigation or pending or reasonably imminent litigation, real estate, deployment of security devices or personnel, investigative proceedings, investigating ethics complaints, deliberations and evaluations regarding procurement. Those are reasons we can have a closed session. Those are very narrow, and those are the only reasons we can go into those closed meetings. If we have a meeting that is not properly called, not properly noticed, not properly closed, if we find ourselves in violation of the Open Meeting Act, that is a Class B misdemeanor. So again, the whole stay out of jail thing, let's not do that. Information from a closed session. Information that's gathered or learned in a closed session is generally considered protected. Sometimes it's private, sometimes it's controlled. There are legal distinctions between those, but from state code, transcripts, minutes, or reports, verbally relaying what you heard to somebody who shouldn't have access to that, you can't do that. What you hear, what you learn in that closed session, that is protected information. It cannot be disclosed. You'll see you cannot disclose it or improperly use it, either for your own personal interest or trying to help somebody else out. If you learn of something through closed-door sessions about economic development and you try and tell somebody, hey, maybe you should do that, or you learn about a business that has something going on and think maybe you should go invest in that, or any type of use of that information or sharing of that information, again, this is state code under the government record, under GRAMA, criminal penalties. A public employee or other person, which includes elected officials who intentionally discloses that information, guilty of a Class B misdemeanor. So I'm not going to talk anymore about the closed sessions. I just really want us to stay out of trouble. We have legal counsel that's going to be doing that in a forum later, but this is one of those things that's best to know right off the bat so none of us get in trouble. Back to the rules and procedures. Adding items to the agenda. Every council member has the right to add items to the agenda. We follow the same process as staff. We should also be following the same deadlines as staff. When they have to get their information to the city the week before, we should do that. Staff has been very kind to us about allowing exceptions, and I'm trying to be really careful with this one because I realize I am saying do as I say, not as I do, because this information came in late. But again, going forward, we're looking to do better and not looking at our failures in the past. Sometimes we may want to agendize just conversation about an item. We have an idea, in our conversations with each other, we think there may be some traction. Rather than going to the work of drawing up an ordinance or drawing up a resolution, let's agendize conversation so we can see what the whole of the council wants to do, and the body of the council can give direction to staff to carry that out. Speaking of running our meeting, Robert's Rules. We've all heard about Robert's Rules and know that we operate under a modified Robert's Rules. If you go to Amazon, you will find an 816-page book about Robert's Rules. If you look in our rules and procedures, it says we use 14 of these. So it is highly, highly modified. You're not expected to know everything. Even those 14 items that we have, there are a lot of moving pieces and moving components, and even those 14 can be rather confusing. You're not expected to be a parliamentarian. Just learn the basics so we can operate with each other. The point of the rules is so that we have order. Everybody can have a chance to share their thoughts, share their support, share their opposition, and we can come to a conclusion and we can handle the business of the city. If we find ourselves having a meeting to discuss rules for having a meeting, we're doing something wrong. The rules are meant to support the meeting. We're not having a meeting to support the rules. So, I want to stall for a second and make sure that's in. Yes, point of order? I don't know. We also have our own rules built in, our own discussion rules built into Robert's rules. This supersedes the modified Robert's rules. Here's a list of different things that we can do, different procedures that are common. Great, fantastic, it's there, read through it. Again, this is just to help the meeting move forward. The mayor is the chair of our meeting. He sets the tone. We try to make sure everybody has an option to do what they need to do and say what they need to say, and we try to avoid parliamentarian tactics to undermine what other people are trying to. We try to avoid using parliamentarian tactics to trip somebody up. We don't want to take advantage of somebody for their words or lack of appropriate words. So don't worry, just kind of read through what's there and we'll help each other. When all else fails, use common sense. Discussion rules. Everybody who's present is required to vote unless there's a conflict of interest. We'll hit on that in a bit. But if you're here, you vote. If you abstain is a no vote. If it's a tie does not go to the runner. If you run a red light and tell the cop, I heard tie goes to the runner, yeah, no deal, you're out. Same thing with this. If a vote ties, it fails to pass. You have to have the majority in order to, tie doesn't pass. Reconsideration is allowed, but highly discouraged. If you vote on something, and let's say that something passes, and then later you receive additional information and think, oh, well, maybe this was a mistake, you do have the ability to say, I want to reconsider this. It's probably only happened 3 or 4 times in the 6 years I've been here on the city council, but we can reconsider items, but it's highly discouraged. Last of all, if there's a conflict of interest as defined in state law, don't take part in any of the conversation. Part number 1, conflict of interest as defined by law. Not necessarily, well, I know so-and-so and he and I are buddies, so I should probably stay out because I don't want to injure the friendship. No, the conflict of interest is clearly defined in state code and city code. If there's a question, talk to the attorneys and consider their advice. Part 2, if you do have a conflict of interest, do not take part in the conversation. The conflicted member shall not lobby, vote, or address the matter with council members or staff. You cannot say, hey, there's an agenda item that's going to bring me and my personal business a fair amount of money if the city approves the contract with me. I highly encourage it. We're wonderful because of this, this, and this, but I'm conflicted, so I'm not going to vote. That doesn't work. If you have a conflict, you don't take part at all. Typically, we've excused ourselves from the dais and then returned after that item was done. Interactions with staff. As a council, we have one employee, and that is the city manager. The city manager is the chief executive officer of our city. He's the one we have to run everything through. The council cannot give direction to members of staff other than our city manager. I also, I thought a while ago, first time we were here, we had a brand new city manager. My thought was, wow, this has got to be hard. How can one man work for 7 bosses? It didn't take long to realize that that's not how it should work. That city manager has one boss, which is the body of the council. Whatever 4 people say, that's what we do. Not 7 of us going to them individually saying, hey, you should do this, you should do that. Rather, it's the body of the council, and what 4 or more of us say, that's where the city manager gets their marching orders. The city manager is responsible for all the administrative work of the city. We're responsible for the policy. Communication from the city manager should be equal to everybody. Nobody should be privileged above anybody else. Individual council members may not intervene in administrative decision-making, and then our rules give some examples like schedule of work or executing department priorities or things like that. Now, if there is something that seems administrative that the council wants to take issue with, for example, let's say we don't think the hours of operation for public works are right. If the body of the council wants to discuss that, then it becomes a policy issue and not an administrative issue. But that's if the body of the council as a whole wants to address it. If the body of the council does not want to address it, it remains administrative, completely in the realm of our city manager. Individual council members shall not attempt to pressure or influence the administrative staff with, and then it gives you a whole list of things. Don't go to staff and say, hey, I know this person, we should hire them for this position, you must hire them, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. If we want to take action, it can be done as the council as a whole. I will point out that with this, there's a separate section that I don't have the presentation that talks about staffing. When it comes to department heads are appointed with the consent and advice of the city council. As a body as a whole, we give approval to our city manager to hire people or to take whatever other actions are necessary. We do provide advice and consent with those, but that all goes through the city manager. We do not have direct interactions with staff or those department heads. Minor requests for information or anything minor that's regularly available to the general public can be made of city staff, or historically the city manager has allowed us to make those minor requests of the department heads. We don't have a definition of minor. My thought would be something less than an hour that doesn't require much time. If there's something that requires substantial staff time, for example, writing a new ordinance that you're going to propose, let's bring it up as a council as a whole, make sure that there's a group that's at least willing to discuss it, then we move forward. An example of this would be a number of years ago on the city council, Mayor Johnson said, I want to find out from the council, is there enough willingness from the council to discuss potentially changing our city logo, or should we drop it? I don't want staff to spend a whole lot of time working on this unless there's a desire to at least have the discussion. After checking with the council, there was a will to at least discuss it, so we gave direction to staff to expend effort to move forward. We don't want staff to waste time. There's a lot of things that we need done, and we don't have a very, we're not overstaffed. So let's avoid giving them things that they shouldn't have. So, in summary, we work as a body. One of us does not have any authority over the other, even when it comes to the mayor in our form of government. We will do what the majority of the council say we will do. When we determine who represents us outside the city council to these other bodies, we determine that as a council. No one council member has the authority to make any commitments, either financial or policy-based, on behalf of the city, and we can only give direction to the city manager, and that direction needs to come from the city council as a whole. You'll notice there's no slide for questions. I will return the floor to the mayor to add anything else he may have, and thank you.
Chris, thank you very much for doing that. Those of us that are new, in fact, it was good to be reviewed by those that have been here for a while too. That's very good information. I appreciate it. I just want to make one remark before we adjourn, and that is to thank the council members for putting up with me this first time and through all of my faux pas, and with our attorneys and our staff. It's been kind of fun, and I look forward to keeping doing this for 2 more years anyway, and then we'll see what happens from there. So with that, we need a motion to adjourn and to move into closed session. So Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, I will not adjourn, but will make a motion to go into closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, strategy session to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation, strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including any form of a water right or water shares, and then adjourn from the closed meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember McConaughey.
I'll second.
We have a motion with a second to go into closed session. A roll call vote.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes, after a 5-minute break.
The vote passes 7 in favor.
Adjourn. Oh, not adjourn. Move to closed session.
I just emailed that PowerPoint.